everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we get the site staff together to talk about our favorite genre of video games. I'm your host. My name is Brian Vitale. Joining me, we've got Mikhail Mandani.
Hello.
Chao-Min Wu.
How's it going?
We've got Cullen Black.
Hello, hello.
Junior Miyai.
Good morning.
And joining us for the first time, I believe, on this podcast, we have Nathan Lee.
Hey, how's it going?
Hello, everyone. So yeah, we are recording this on Saturday, June 7th. For most of us, the date might be different for Mikhail over in his side of the world. I'm not actually sure. But we are recording this right in the middle of Summer Games Fest weekend. And of course, we're just a few days removed from the launch of the Nintendo Switch 2. So if you've been listening to previous episodes of this podcast, you know the reason why the roster is a bit different this week is because James, Adam, and Josh are all in LA covering for the event for us over at Summer Games Fest at the Live Expo. They were at the theater yesterday, etc. Scott also is there as a freelancer as well. So we kind of have the B team here today, and I'm including myself in that, no judgment rendered, to kind of talk about exactly all the news that has been dropping over the week. To kind of give some context, we're a few days removed from, like I said, the Switch 2 launch. We're within the week of the Sony State of Play that kind of preceded the weekend. The Summer Games Fest Live, the main theater show, was just last night at the time of recording. We are recording this a few hours before like the Future Games show, the PC Gaming show, and the Microsoft event. So even though by the time this is published, those events likely will have happened, we have not seen those yet. So those will be covered on next week's episode of the podcast. So that works pretty well for us. That way we can kind of split the news deluge between two episodes. This will mostly be a news-focused podcast to cover all those things. But we do have a few things that we do want to talk about in terms of game releases. And of course, we're going to start out with the Nintendo Switch 2. So with the 6 people that we have present today, I believe we're split down the middle, that 3 of us have picked up the Nintendo Switch 2. Or I guess, no, 2 of us have, because Mikhail's is currently being shipped. We'll talk about it. And then a few of us have not yet. We're going to start out with Cullen, because he's been kind of our Switch specialist for the site for a while. So, and I know you have a few stories related to the Switch 2 over the weekend. I know Nathan has it as well. And then Mikhail can talk about his experience attempting to get his hands on a Switch 2. But without further ado, I'll hand it over to Cullen about your Switch 2 launch days experience so far anyways.
Yeah, no, I'm the resident RPG site Switch port slop expert.
That's true.
I'm the guy we give the Switch ports to go, yeah, pretty rough. But as that guy, like I can't, I don't really know why the Switch has had such a hold on me for the last 8 years, which again, 8 years feel old, but it's my go-to console no matter what, even with the Steam Deck, which I like a lot. I would always be fond of the Switch in particular. And so having had a few days of like access to the Switch 2, it is basically everything I ever wanted. The handful of RPGs that we have access to on launch isn't a lot. I think the main ones, and like anyone feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like Cyberpunk, Deltarune, Bravely Default, and Yakuza, if you want to count that. I guess
so
Rune
Rune
Factory
Factory as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and Rune Factory. So it's like a decent amount. I'd say the big ones there, at least for us, are like Cyberpunk and Bravely Default. But Cyberpunk is kind of this system's big flex. I was talking to Mikhail about this, and it really is like smart of Nintendo to have gotten CD Projekt Red to make this port, because if anyone here has seen footage of it running on Switch 2, it looks like magic. It stacks up to the current console versions shockingly well. But everything else that's kind of come out in terms of RPGs haven't been too like impressive on what the system can do. So besides Cyberpunk, I'm kind of just running a lot of games on backwards compatibility, and it's really impressive. Like it's kind of similar to how running a PS4 game on a PS5, where it'll run at the frame rates they probably should have always ran at, but you're limited at whatever resolution you could have kind of had on that. So you'll have a couple like really impressive success stories like Monster Hunter Stories 2, a really fun RPG that just was an absolute mess on Switch, now runs at a locked 60 FPS, making that I think the definitive portable way to play that game.
That's actually really
I think
cool
one of
because, like, we've talked about there in previous episodes of the podcast. We talked about some of the obvious hitters, and we'll kind of go through a list that Mikhail kind of prepared for us. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet were the big ones.
Mhm.
Not quite RPG space, but Tears of the Kingdom, the load time comparisons, and then things like Xenoblade 3 got a specific update for its Switch 2 performance. But I wasn't expecting to hear Monster Hunter Story, so it's really cool to hear that that one, kind of a little bit more of an understated one, also performed so much better on the Switch 2. And then Chad, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was gonna say, you probably play Bayonetta on that thing. That's probably the best way to play it. The sequel now on it, right? It's finally a stable 60 FPS now.
2 or 3?
Both.
I played a bit of 3, and I was kind of like, it didn't make me like the game still, but it did hit 60 FPS. Bayonetta's a great case to like talk about this like backwards compat thing with Switch 2 right now, because it would have been nice if they had an update ready to go to like make the resolution look nice, because it still looks just as muddy and kind of gross as Bayonetta 3 has always looked. But again, it runs decent now. I think I did a whole like stream of just going through like 40 games on back compat for like 10 minutes at a time. And at Bayonetta 3, it was like, oh, it runs good now. We played it for 5 minutes. We're like, oh, it's still Bayonetta 3. And immediately quit out.
Mikhail, you have a comment?
Yeah, so no, just going back to, I was watching Cullen stream some of the games. He was doing it on Twitch, and then after that, he was showing me some games which we can't talk about yet. And it was just like he was just obviously like I don't have my Switch 2 yet, so I was like living vicariously through him because that's exactly what I did when I got my PS5. I just loaded up like a ton of PS4 games which didn't run well, and I was like, let me see how this runs, let me see how this runs. And then Monster Hunter World is like finally it's the best version now because it loads faster than PC and it's like rock solid 60. And then I was just talking to Colin about like he was showing Dragon Quest Heroes, which he'll talk about, which I completely forgot even released on the Switch too. But yeah, I was just the Bayonetta 3 example is really interesting because it still has the low resolution it did. And this reminded me of No More Heroes 3, which obviously not an RPG, but it had a similar issue where the resolution was really low, but then now it just hits its frame rate cap.
Mhm.
So I was just curious if I've seen a lot of comments. I think it's just going off vibes and feel and not actual numbers because there have been people who are saying, oh, this game now runs at 1080p handheld and stuff like that, which is just not possible if your game was capped at 720p. So I'm just curious if what Cullen thinks of how these games, which like, was sub 720p and looked a little blurry on the original Switch, how they look on the handheld screen.
Yeah, I think a good one for that to speak on would be Xenoblade 2, which always had a really rough adaptive resolution. And I think the exact numbers for that were the ceiling for a game like Xenoblade 2 docked was 720p with adaptive resolution that could go all over, and for handheld was 540p, around that range. So yeah, when you're playing Xenoblade 2 on your handheld now for Switch 2, it is going to hit that 540p number. It doesn't dip below that anymore, but 540p kind of scaled up to 1080 still doesn't look great. It's I really wish they would introduce an option to play the docked versions of these games if you're doing back compat, like, but want to play it portably still, because a lot of Switch, well, not a lot. That system could not hit 1080p to save its life. But if it were trying to play the docked 1080p versions of these games, it looks so much better, like on the undock. So I hope this is something that's possible and they're able to add this in a patch down the line. But I will say playing Xenoblade 2 at a solid 30 FPS is really weird.
Yeah,
It's
and I
very
do
strange
know
it shouldn't do
that
that.
Xenoblade 3 got a specific update, not a Switch 2 edition, but an update to improve its performance on Switch 2, like for, I assume, like frame stabilization. To my knowledge,
Mhm.
Xenoblade 2 has not gotten that, so it's just benefiting from running on a faster processor. Um, I do want to loop in Nathan here because I do know that Nathan also has gotten their hands on a Switch 2, and I don't know like what games I saw you tweeting or skeeting about some of the Pokemon games, but I'm not sure if there's any other games that you've been trying out with your Switch 2.
Not really. I'm actually in the middle of the Pokemon Renaissance at the moment. It's probably started last summer, so I've mostly just been playing Pokemon.
Mhm.
Uh, but try a little bit of Mario Kart World, and yeah, that game looks amazing, just in general. But yeah, that just mostly Pokemon.
But Pokemon Scarlet and Violet were some of the biggest games that people were like, "Wow, this is what they should have released as," or they like because games that were so heavily hampered by their performance on Switch One that I've seen people talking about. Maybe not necessarily like re-reviewing the games, but almost just coming back to it with a fresh set of eyes now that it's actually running the way it always should have. Have you tried out Scarlet and Violet?
Oh yeah, I've been playing Scarlet and Violet pretty much since the Switch 2 came out. That's kind of like my launch game. That's kind of what I treat it as, my launch game, because
Some people are, and it's kind of valid.
It's
yeah,
incredible what they've done to it.
yeah, the game actually functions properly now. Part of the reason why I stayed away from Scarlet and Violet for so long was because I just looked at the performance of that game and I was like, that's going to be so miserable to play that I don't even know if I even want to touch this game, even though I bought it like 3 years ago when it first released.
Oh, so this is your first
So
time playing it, or like playing it
yeah, this
significantly?
is my first time like really actually playing it because I think I only
Mhm.
put in like maybe 5 hours, I think, a few years ago, and I was pretty much done with the performance right away.
Yeah,
So
A
playing through this game for the first time is like it's an experience.
an unsung hero, because like speaking of Pokemon that no one's really talking about is Arceus, which hasn't
yeah.
received like an official update, but I booted it up on Switch 2, and I guess the like adaptive resolution ceiling on that was incredibly high already because that game looks really crisp and it runs at a like solid 30 FPS from all my testing.
Nice.
Which
Have they fixed the backgrounds for some of the Pokemon that run at like 2 FPS?
they probably not because they would have to probably do an update for that one. But I'd say like if anyone here ever thought like Arceus was like unplayable, like I always thought it was like fine, like it got the job done.
It
Nowhere
wasn't
near
as
as
bad
bad
as
as
Scarlet
Scarlet and
Violet. Yeah.
Violet.
Yeah, that's fine.
But like it is so much more stable now and just running around like I'm actually really impressed. I want to see someone like, you know, count pixels on this, but everything is incredibly crisp. I can send over a screenshot before I head out, but I'm like I might go back and try to clean my plate on Arceus before ZA comes out because Arceus was kind of always my favorite new like Pokemon game, and it's just with normal backwards compatibility, it's in such a better state.
Mikhail, you had a comment?
Yeah, so what Nathan said actually is exactly what I did with Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. When it came out, I was very excited for it because Hyrule Warriors on 3DS was actually my first quote unquote Warriors game, which got me into the series, and I played every single game since on every single platform, literally. So I was very excited for Age of Calamity, and I bought it digitally. Like I don't really buy games digitally because I prefer having them physically. I bought it digitally. It ran like actual shit. Like it might be, I actually think Pokemon didn't bother me as much as Age of Calamity did. So I couldn't last beyond like 5 or 6 hours, I think, at that time. And as soon as backward compatibility got confirmed for the Switch too, like we'll get to that when we talk about that article I did. But yeah, like I'm just so excited to play Age of Calamity and finally get to experience it because it was miserable. I don't know how people played that. And
I
like I
I
actually could deal
sorry.
with Pokemon Violet, but I couldn't deal with Age of Calamity, to give you an example of how bad it was for me. So I'm
Yeah.
just gonna do the same thing with my Switch too, like Age of Calamity, download that and actually get to play it. So
What
when
did
I
I
remember
reviewed that
visiting
for
my
us.
maybe you did.
Sorry,
It's
go.
been a while. I remember visiting my family's my parents and my brothers for Christmas the year that came out, and I've played like uh the Link's Awakening remake and the Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. Neither of those ran very well. Obviously Scarlet Violet, but Age of Calamity by far in my purview was the worst. Like I saw my younger brother playing that on of course at the time a base Switch, and I was like, this is awful. Like I can survive. Like I grew up playing sub 20 FPS and 64 games. Like it's something I don't like, but I can do and manage. But Calamity, I was just like, Jesus, I can't.
Yeah.
So I haven't seen any Switch 2 footage of that. I'd be like, wow, my eyes been opened. And then for
Yeah.
ZA, I'm almost treating that like I'm not a huge Pokemon fan, but I did play Arceus and Scarlet Violet at launch, just to kind of be in the zeitgeist of it, I suppose. I didn't want to be, my FOMO commanded me that I had to play those. But if I play ZA, it's almost gonna be like if I'm playing it, I'm gonna get a Switch 2 to play it because even just the trailers they've shown for that game, I'm treating that almost like a Switch 2 game because I don't want to deal with the performance on Switch 1, even if it's not as bad as Calamity or Scarlet Violet.
Yeah, I remember I saved a clip on my original Switch of Age of Calamity. I swear the game dropped down to like 1 FPS during one of my combo attacks. It was so bad.
And the new Hyrule Warriors is a cross-gen game, right? I even forget what
No, no,
it's
no.
called.
I don't
It's
know,
just on
Switch
Switch
2.
2.
Oh, it
Yeah,
is
it's Age of
exclusive. Oh,
Imprisonment. Yeah, yeah.
thank
So,
goodness.
and the funniest thing is when they revealed that it looked pretty bad as well, and I was like, is this going to be the new norm where, like how when you have a game made for PS4 on PS5, it's just like locked 60 FPS, but then you have like a game made for PS5 and suddenly the frame rate is a problem, like with Unreal Engine 5 games. And I was just thinking, oh my God, is this going to be one of those things where you have to wait for the Switch 3 to get it at a good frame rate? But thankfully, when they showed footage again, it was like in an interview, it was better. So yeah, hopefully this one is good because I'm excited for it. Even though I don't really care about what like narratively or whatever, I just like I'm happy to play a new Warriors game. Like I've played all the One Piece Pirate Warriors games without having watched One Piece to give you some perspective. So
Mhm.
You jumped on the bandwagon too, huh?
yeah.
Junior, before we started recording, we were talking about you're over in Japan right now, and the Japanese Switch 2 situation's a little bit different. I don't know, like, if that played a role in you deciding to or to not get a Switch 2.
It did. So for those of you that don't know, Japan does not really do a first come first serve system. Every single major electronics retailer here uses a lottery application system, and so just going off of my local one, Yodobashi, which is a Kyoto specific electronics retailer. Right now, they are accepting lottery applications from June 6th until June 9th. So you have a 3-day window. They will announce the winners on June 10th at 10 in the morning. And then you have 3 days to like make your purchase and go pick up your Switch. Or Switch 2. The problem is that the 4 Switch It bundles that are available right now, you have the Japanese only bundle, the Japanese only Mario Kart World bundle, the Japanese only Samsung Micro SD bundle, and the Japanese only Mario Kart Samsung Micro SD bundle. There's no way to get the international version of the Switch 2 easily because they made a limited number of those here, and they're trying to prevent, I guess, like people taking advantage of Japan's weak yen to buy a bunch of consoles and then import them or export them rather to other countries to scalp. Um, so yeah, I will not be getting a Switch 2. I don't know when they're going to make the international version more available, but I would be more. Uh, it would be more prudent of me to get a Switch 2 in like the States and then have it shipped over here, which is
Um,
a
when
little
when
a
the,
little
when
funny
the
to think
Switch
of.
2 came out, we of course covered the fact that the Japanese market had a specific version that was, in a sense, like deliberately region locked in order to offer it at a better price, I guess is the sales pitch. I guess I didn't realize that in turn that the international like the regular model would become so hard to get. I assumed it would just be like you pick one or the other. But you're basically saying that you can't get that from a major retailer.
That's correct. Yeah, I've been to Yodobashi, Edion, Ketsudinki. These are like all major. Think of them as like different versions of Walmart, Best Buy, whatever. And all of them are doing lottery systems only for the Japanese only version. Um, and so it's not really here or there, but international people who live in Japan typically have to kind of suffer these type of things pretty often, where which is understandable. Japan is like 98 point something percent Japanese people, but yeah, it just really bites for expats that live here that have to kind of just deal with it or import from another country.
Well, it sounds like a prudent decision to me. So hopefully you're able to if you have a high interest in the Switch, get that sorted before the end of the year through either a retailer or an import site.
I'm gonna be the counterweight to Colin's comment earlier. I'm actually not a big Switch guy. The Bing Bing Wahoo at 15 frames machine was never like something I really cared about, and I'm not like a huge Mario Kart World jockey or whatever. But
I mean, that's fair. Like I haven't picked one up
Yeah,
because
yeah,
Mario Kart
fair.
World is the big like launch new exclusive, and I'm not a big Mario Kart fan. Obviously, the big other exclusive that they've shown for this year is the Donkey Kong game. Not a big Donkey Kong fan, but for me, my weakness would be Metroid Prime 4. I'm like, all right, Metroid Prime 4 is going to be my Switch.
that would
to
that would make
start a
me
game.
get a Switch too. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
I like, to be fair, like, yeah, I did not get this thing for Mario. Like, I don't even have Mario Kart World. I'm just here to play my VNs,
Yep.
looking and running at 4K 60 FPS. Like, oh, gotta boot up that Fate Stay Night remastered on my Switch too.
Mikhail, you had a comment?
Yeah. Yeah, so the Japan thing is a little interesting because my Switch OLED, like in India, most of the stores here at that time when I got mine were getting it from Japan as well. And that's how they were able to get like a good price, I think, over here. So that's Nintendo probably realized that, right, with the yen becoming so weak. In fact, I know people who like for them it's easier and cheaper to import like Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong from Japan on Amazon, and you pay less than what you'd pay for it locally in the US, and the games all have English anyway. So that is something which Nintendo has been combating, I guess, with this thing. But the problem is the international SKU for the Switch 2 is only available on the My Nintendo store through, like Junior said, like this lottery system. So you have to like sign up with an account that has Nintendo Switch online for a while. And there's some stuff which I've been talking to friends over there. And like Junior said, they're all just getting it from Canada and the US shipped back to Japan. So yeah, like that's
And
what's happened. And one more thing, like you mentioned how everyone's buying it for Mario Kart and all that. I'm kind of with Cullen right now, where people are asking me why are you getting a Switch 2 now, and I said I'm getting it to play Cyberpunk, Yakuza Zero, Rune Factory, and to like basically try out a lot of games via backward compatibility. I do not care about Mario Kart World. I do not care about Donkey Kong. Like being able to play the Zelda games finally with a good frame rate and like replay, I should say. That's something which is like one of the main reasons I wanted. And obviously, if you read some of my articles on the site, you know how much I like handhelds. So expect to see another handheld in those photos soon.
This is a backwards compatibility machine.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so many titles there. Like talk about you playing Scarlet and Violet for the first time. Mikhail finally getting into Age of Calamity. It seems like it's a really good fit for it. I was gonna make a joke that Mikhail having to get like a wide angle lens for his pictures to fit the ROG, the deck, the Switch 1, the Switch 2, the PS Portal. Got to get a Wii U pad
I'm
in
gonna
there.
I'm gonna post a picture of one of my Balatro things which I did in the staff chat. You can see that, but yeah, that was something I thought about back then.
Did people ask you that question? Why do you have so many Steam Decks? Or-
Yeah, I think what happened is like just before Cullen has to leave, just like a quick tangent. When James and I have this Steam Deck RPGs feature where every month or two we update it with like whatever's released and if they are good on Steam Deck. And what I usually do is I take a new photo for them for like the major games. So like for this month's update, I did like Fuga and stuff like that. So usually like I'll have two of them. And for one of them when I had I think it was Daybreak 2 and I forgot the other game. So I when I posted that, the NIS America social account reposted on Twitter and they used the photo. And there was someone who replied that saying, "Why do you have two Steam Decks over there?" And I just thought of that Bilbo Baggins, from the Lord of the Rings, the movie where he says, "Why shouldn't I?" and he puts the ring on or something like that. So I'll never forget that. So I always go back to that specific GIF when someone says, "Why do you have two Steam Decks?"
That's great. I like
Yeah,
that.
I think I linked your article to a friend of mine. And my friend's like, "Are you sure this isn't a flex post?"
No,
It's a
I'll
little
tell
bit
you
of a
one
flex,
thing
but
though. The one time I actually did flex was very recently when I did the Fantasy Life review where I wanted to put my 3DS in the photo with Fantasy Life, and I actually included my other 3DS which has Xenoblade cover plates. That was a flex because the Xenoblade cover plates, it took me a lot of time to get those over here. So yeah, that was a flex.
I actually have that actually. Yes. I actually have like a lot of plates. I used to buy those 3DS plates. They weren't a thing in over America, but they were pretty popular in Japan, so I kept importing plates. So
We got a few of them. I bought a couple myself.
is that the
Fates
is that
one.
the backbone on the left third one down? He's showing a picture in our
Yes.
staff chat. Those are
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. No, the that's a Razer controller.
Oh, it's the Razor
This
one.
was like
Okay.
before I got, yeah, this is before I got the new backbones, but yeah. Anyway. So like I think before Cullen has to leave, just one thing I want to ask him before he leaves about the Switch 2 is so what do you think about the handheld experience for like ergonomics?
Oh, it feels great. I've always been someone who liked actually holding my Switch in like handheld mode. A lot of people said it like hurt their hands or something, but I played most of my Switch 1 in bed on that little handheld, and this is just a more I'd say it's like it feels like a premium like handheld experience though. I like the bigger size of it. It feels good to hold. The buttons all feel good. The new like Joy-Con little magnet things it's weird at first, but it feels a lot more stable, especially as someone whose Joy-Cons would always like fly out of the system if I touch them even remotely. I can't see that happening with this, with the way they have the lock in place.
So tell me you've also just been taking them out and putting them back in just over and over again, like
I
I have.
might have. I might have a little bit. I I'm always a bit worried to do that, especially because like with the way you have to like hit the button and like my hands kind of like roam when I'm playing. Like my fingers will like tap the back and stuff like that. So I'm always worried I'm gonna like hit it and like the Switch is gonna fall out from under me. But it's a lot more secure this time, and it's nice as well because you play a game like Cyberpunk on this like on the handheld version, and it's just like whoa, like this is like I'm so excited for more third parties to get involved with this and port their really nice looking games to this system because it seems like a really powerful machine, and being able to play things like portably and not see massive dips to it is going to be really nice.
I'm gonna be the outlier. I'm gonna be the guy that's gonna sit in the bed playing visual novels on this.
You're
I
not
mean,
the outlier at all.
I'm
I'm
not too
doing
far
that.
off either.
Yeah,
I,
no, that's
I
when
think
I
if I
two
buy a
comes
beefy
out.
machine just to play visual novels, which is feels this kind of
See,
This could be rough.
I'm
No.
not going to get a Switch 2 because you can't play Final Fantasy 11 on it. So,
As
oh,
good
I mean,
as good a reason as any.
Yeah.
there's always a reason not to buy a certain system. Well, like I'm really into the Switch as well, just like Colin is. He kind of relates to my thoughts with the Switch. I actually buy lots of physical games on the Switch. I think that's my only like negative caveat with like the Switch 2. It's like every game is like a game key card. It's like the game
Yeah.
is not even there. It's like okay, that's just something. I'm just not gonna buy it. Then it's like
Yeah, we
well,
talked about Marvelous focusing on getting the game key card. Getting the actual physical version for their games, and then of course Cyberpunk as well. So, Colin, thank you so much for jumping on to talk about being again our Switch 2 specialist and jumping on to talk about it for us. Do you have any other closing comments before you head out?
Yeah, just to kind of like end with talking about the keycard stuff. I got one keycard and it was Bravely, and it's a little inconvenient, but not as inconvenient as I was expecting. I was expecting it to take you to the eShop, have you wait, navigate to it, get the game then. But no, it really just downloads it like immediately. But I I don't know how much I'll be getting this like keycard stuff because it is like if it's digital, it's always more convenient just navigate over, click it, and then play the game. I think the only thing of note that I've seen is that it seems like a lot of publishers are very inconsistent about if their Switch 1 games are going to be getting updates. I haven't seen this talked about a lot, and Mikhail pointed this out to me. Like the new Final Fantasy Tactics is going to be a code in a box for Switch 2, but the Switch 1 version will just upgrade to the Switch 2 version. So you can just get the actual Switch 1 cart, have the whole game on there, and then just get the upgrade. So I think like key cards are annoying, but like I think the industry kind of needs to just make up their mind. But besides that, it's a really great handheld.
One last question before you go, Colin.
Yeah,
Did
sure.
you try the Trails games on that thing?
Daybreak still looks really bad on it.
Oh, rip.
I'm really hoping that Sky First and Horizon, the Switch versions of those, have some kind of option in there for higher resolution if you're playing on a Switch 2, because if not, those are going to look really rough if Daybreak 2, which was a in-house Falcom port, is anything to go by, because it's very blurry still.
Not good.
Yeah. But well, I guess we'll have to see. But yeah, thank you all for having me. Sorry to go
Oh,
so quick,
thanks.
but
No, thanks for jumping on, Colin.
Love
All right.
hearing from you.
Take care.
And before we head into the kind of the mix of news between the Switch 2 announcement, the Sony State of Play, and the first half, so to speak, of the Summer Games Fest announcements, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about a few of the reviews, previews, articles that have gone up on the site. First of which is the review for the new Rune Factory Guardians of Azuma. So Junior, who is not a regular participant on the podcast, did actually review this for us and came to this game as a newcomer to the series from a fresh perspective. Kind of is the viewpoint of this review. So, Junior, you took a stab at Rune Factory, Guardians of Azuma, and you had some feelings about it. So, just kind of lead us through like your reception to the game, your review, and just your general thoughts on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to like preface this entire thing by stating that when I got pegged to play Guardians of Azuma, I was very, very excited. Y'all were in the staff chat. You saw me. I was like, I've never played a Rune Factory. I've always heard that they're pretty good. I was really excited to get into it, and I do like farming sim or village sim games to a degree. Like, I really liked Harvestella, and that's like a 7 out of 10 as well. Harvestella was a really interesting game that I don't think we're ever going to see again because Square Enix doesn't want to risk money. And so I was very excited to hop into Guardians of Azuma, and my first, I don't know, 5 to 8 hours were okay. Like, I wasn't really gelling with the combat, and I do want to talk about that later, but the setup and the characters, like there is a lot to like in Guardians of Azuma in that regard. But over the course of the rest of the game, which, my total playthrough was like 27, 28 hours for the main story, it felt like a slowly dying flame, if that makes sense. Like, it was very, very bland, and it just kept getting worse the more I played.
And I think it's totally valid to come to a review from a newcomer's perspective because we try to mix it up here. And Adam, of course, is our reviews editor slash editor in chief, and we try to have a variety of like having some reviews written by this person knows the series, this person, has a, history of the pedigree of the developer or the creative director or whatever. But we do try to change it up and say, like, you know what? A fresh perspective is just as valid. Let's have someone who's interested, like you stated you were, even if you don't have the history. There's nothing that makes that review invalid. So I'm really glad that we got to get someone who wasn't like, oh, I'm the Rune Factory stan, I get to review the Rune Factory games, because sometimes I think those reviews can be, in certain contexts, less valuable, where you just give the fan of the series the review for the newest entry, and then they say, yep, I'm a fan, this is good, and it's like, well, okay, like that maybe was not unexpected. So when you came into it, I don't know if you've mentioned kind of both sideways in your review and before we started recording, do you have any interest to go back to some of the main entries to see if they gel better, like 4 or 5, or perhaps some of the older ones?
Well, so at the end of my review, I did put in there that I was going to go play Rune Factory 4 because that is the one that people both in RPG site staff and outside of RPG site staff have told me is like really good.
Mm-hmm.
And so I put my money where my mouth is. I did buy Rune Factory 4, and I did put 5 hours in. I know 5 hours is not really a whole lot, but I mean, have you seen this week? Like,
Oh yeah,
there's
it's been a
lot
busy
going on.
week. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a busy week. And I want to say that, yeah, Rune Factory 4 is good. You know, in the 5 hours that I played, I've already identified a number of interesting interlocking progression systems, which is something that I talked about in the review for Guardians of Ozma, is just kind of being very thin. Rune Factory 4 has a lot more. There's a lot more going for it. The combat is still not good, but it's easier to accept and fiddle with combat designed in a dungeon crawler for the 3DS that was made, like, I don't know, almost 15 years ago, as opposed to a third person character action game designed in Unreal Engine 5 for modern systems. You know what I mean? Like, it
Basically, at different standards.
right, yeah. I was expecting something more than Genshin Impact combat, but worse. And I do want to clarify, Guardians of Ozma does play like Genshin Impact. I have, unfortunately, over like 100 and something hours in Genshin Impact. I know what Genshin Impact feels like.
Oh, I do too. I've been there.
Yeah. I
Yes.
just I don't normally like comment on, you know, the peanut gallery, but I have gotten a lot of people saying it looks nothing like Genshin Impact combat. And I'm like, you just are not looking at the same game.
Like, I don't know, like, people give people flack when they compare the Genshin Impact, but when you compare it to something like, I don't know, let's just say Breath of the Wild or Dark Souls, you don't get the same flack as much these days. Because I guess it just
Right.
became the norm. But when you compare it to something that's popular, people start to get really upset about it.
And
I
there's
would
always
actually think this is
there's always a lot of context they have to give. Like, I saw some comments saying like, well, it's, you know, it's a cozy farming sim. It's the combat's not supposed to be the focus. And it's like, you're not wrong, but also this game, you know, they didn't give it a numbered title. They deliberately changed how the combat looks. Like, it feels like some of the impetus is to try to bring in fresh, you know, fresh people, fresh perspectives. And Junior was like, you know what, this seems interesting. I want to try it, and they did, and that was their honest feedback. And go ahead, Mikhail.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
yeah. So I think it's absolutely valid for, like, even if it was a numbered follow-up or like whatever. I enjoy reading reviews from people who haven't played the series before. Like, you know, when Josh wrote about his thoughts with Fantasy Life, I, as a complete newcomer, I wanted to see more of that, because I already know how people who enjoyed the original are going to feel about this, because I've played, like, the original is my most played 3DS game, so I kind of figured how people would be like over here. So when Junior, who has played Genshin Impact, and, like, I'm gonna be honest, I've played a shitload of Rune Factory 4. I've played Rune Factory 5. I've played Rune Factory 3 through the special release. When I saw Guardians of Azuma, when they revealed it, I think it was called Project Dragon or something.
Yeah, it was.
Everyone I know was joking about how it looks like Genshin and it has a Paimon like character and stuff like that. And it wasn't like Genshin Impact brackets derogatory. It was like Genshin Impact complimentary at that time. And the same people I know now are, some of them like it, some of them dislike it. I have friends who enjoy Rune Factory and have never played Genshin Impact, and they like this. I have friends who, like, I have someone who has, whose Rune Factory 4 is her favorite game of all time. She does not like this at all. So you're gonna see these things all over the spectrum. I was very curious about Junior's review. I obviously read it before it went up. So I haven't finished the game yet. I was just doing our tech comparison stuff and all, but I was very interested in his opinion specifically. Like, I want to see how newcomers find this, because it's a spin-off game aimed at broadening the series, because you have, like, more of a combat focus and less of a farming focus compared to, like, Rune Factory 4 and stuff. So that's why I'm more curious about these kinds of, like, opinions on the game. And Chow, who's played Rune Factory 4 a lot and likes it and does not like Rune Factory 5. I'm interested to see what he says also about it when he gets to play it.
I want to say real quick that when I played Rune Factory 4, and there's this pop up that says, by the way, sometimes when you get certain, like when you farm certain crops, they may turn into dungeons. I had to set my controller down. I was like, this is so cool. Why is, like, had I played Rune Factory 4 before playing Guardians of Ozma, like a lot of people told me to, I think I actually would have gone lower on Guardians of Ozma on the score. I think I would have given it like a 5, because there's so many cool things in your series already, and I feel like you stripped it away for the sake of putting in a very bland combat system.
So we do have Junior's review for Rune Factory, Guardians of Azuma up on the site at rpgsite.net. a little bit of a non-favorable review. But I will say this: like, if you played, and this is not a challenge, this is earnest. If you played Guardians of Azuma, whether you're new to the series or you're a longtime Rune Factory fan, like, send us an email, staff@rpgsite.net, pitch us, and you potentially, I can't guarantee anything, I'd have to run it by Adam and Alex. We could have you write an op-ed for us if it's something that you were positive about. We're willing to share that. One person's review is not the arbiter of truth, but we'll have it up there because it is. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, can I just say something real quick?
Sure.
One of the comments that I saw a lot, and again, I really try not to look at comments. One of the comments I saw a lot of was, why do they have this guy writing reviews, or he should not be allowed to review games or whatever, because I gave your favorite series a 6 out of 10. If you think that my writing is terrible, or you disagree with my review, that is fine. But then my challenge to you is, let's see yours. Let's see your pitches. Let's see your writing. Obviously, I'm not like senior staff. I can't, say that it's going to get read or published or whatever, but there's nothing stopping you from playing a game you like and then putting up a piece on, some journaling website and doing the work that way. If you want to, if you disagree with my review, go ahead. Let's see it.
And I can't
Pitch-
think of a
pitch-
specific
pitch it.
example, but we've done that in the past where I think one example I know of was Final Fantasy VII Remake. When it very first came out, I reviewed it officially and gave it a lukewarm kind of 8 out of 10. I was like, this is good. Not great. It didn't blow my mind, but it's good. But then George Foster, who was a contributor at the time, was like, I'm new to Final Fantasy and I adored this. This was, holy shit, my game of the year. And they wrote an op-ed. And then we had, both opinions on the website. And guess what? That's totally fine. So it's an earnest call in that sense. It's like, we are willing to publish a positive opinion on Rune Factory at any time. Just let us know. But thank you, Junior, for covering that for us. And it's really cool to hear that you've also didn't shy you or push you away from saying, you know what, let me try another game in the series, Rune Factory 4, and then also sharing some of your thoughts on that as well. And that's kind of it for the games we want to talk about. I know it's a little bit of an abbreviated section compared to what we normally do on the podcast, but we have a lot of news to get through for the remainder of the runtime. First, I'll kind of give like a little bit of a rundown on different features that I've gone up on rpgsite.net over the last week. A lot of these are kind of write-ups of discussions that we've kind of already had on the podcast, but kind of given written form. For instance, Fantasy Life I, we've talked about it at least a couple different times on the podcast. Both Josh and Mikhail kind of have been spearheading that discussion over the last couple of weeks, really for the last month. Josh wrote kind of his op-ed for Fantasy Life I a few weeks ago, and then now Mikhail has put up the actual Fantasy Life I, The Girl Who Steals Time review up on the site as well. So in this particular case, you've got 2 opinion pieces up on the site that are kind of in agreement. That's just kind of how the cookie crumbled, so to speak. But the newer feature being Mikhail's review on Fantasy Life I.
So, just to give you some background, I joined RPG site in the end of September last year, or like early October is when my first thing went up. I had this impression back then of like, how you have like, I don't really like putting numbers on reviews because I always like want people to read the text and stuff, but that's just like you have to put numbers on reviews and stuff. So I just had this thing where back then, like I've been reading the site for many, many years now. So it just felt like a 10 at RPG site is a very rare occasion. It's not like, how a lot of games are really, really good every year, but a 10 just felt very rare. So like I remember when Josh gave Infinite Wealth a 10, I gave it a 10 as well when I reviewed it on Touch Arcade back then. And I was like, yeah, this is one of those things. So when I was playing Fantasy Life, I didn't like, I didn't say that, okay, I'm gonna write my review now. The game is a 10. I wrote a long review and I read through it and I said, yep, this is what it reads like to me. Now let's see what like Adam, my editor for that review, would say for it. So I ended up giving it a 10, obviously. And yeah, it is I think one of my favorite games I've played in many, many years. And they managed to like smash all my expectations and live up to whatever memory I had of the 3DS game. Even revisiting the 3DS game, I've realized how much more they've added to this that I would miss if I played the 3DS game now and stuff. So yeah, I'm very happy I got that review done finally because I've now I think I've like maybe 90 hours into it and maybe could get 500 more out of it. So that's all I wanted to say about that. I hope more people play it, especially with the Switch 2 version. I know that's one of the first games I'm going to install when I get my Switch 2 and upgrade the Switch 1 version. So yeah.
We do have the feature for Fantasy Life I, the review, I should say, from Mikhail up on the site. And then speaking for him, because he's not here, last week, James did talk about two topics. He and Adam talked back and forth about the recently released Fuga Melodies of Steel 3. And they both kind of were very lukewarm on it. And lukewarm might even be positive. They thought it was kind of iterative. They thought, if people were playing these games in sequence, that by the time they got to the third game, they really wouldn't really enjoy themselves. And his written review up on the site now kind of reflects that. So Fuga Melodies of Steel 3 review up on the site, rpgsite.net. So James did get that written up and published for us. And then he also talked about the most recent patch to Final Fantasy XIV, Occult Crescent. He talked about how that one he was really positive on, putting a lot of time into, thought it really encouraged the multiplayer aspect of an MMO, which sometimes Final Fantasy XIV, in my interpretation of his reaction to it, kind of strays away from sometimes. So Final Fantasy XIV patch 7.25, not a scored review because just a patch note update, but kind of gave that a little bit of a write-up up on the site as well. A few other articles that are up on the site. Top 10 Switch RPGs that we want to revisit for the Nintendo Switch 2. And these, again, we've kind of talked about, when the Switch 2 was announced, when it came out, all the different things we wanted to try on Switch 2. And it's kind of like a list where you read down it and you're like, yeah, nodding my head. That's kind of what I want to see on the Switch 2. This is put together by Mikhail. Age of Calamity's on there, Scarlet and Violet, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Echoes of Wisdom, Link's Awakening, all of those that we've already mentioned. Not mentioned, Fire Emblem Three Houses, a game that, of course, as a site, generally, we all were pretty positive on, but never really ran the greatest, kind of did have also that blurry dynamic resolution. So Fire Emblem Three Houses on the Switch 2 would be an interesting game to kind of interrogate and see how it runs on the better hardware. Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, we did mention that briefly. Mikhail did, running on the Switch 2. And then, of course, things like Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. And, I actually didn't know, Mikhail, you've got Monster Hunter Stories 2 on here. So when Colin mentioned it, I didn't realize that that was also on your list.
Yeah. So, when I talk about Monster Hunter Rise, everyone would just think, why don't you just play it on like Steam Deck or like PlayStation or Xbox or your PC? But the thing is, Monster Hunter Rise was a Switch exclusive for a long time. While Sunbreak came to both systems, the population is still like vastly more on Switch than on any other platform. And PC matchmaking is still region locked with Sunbreak. I don't think that's with Monster Hunter Rise and Monster Hunter World with the expansions. I don't think this is something a lot of people know. It usually has matchmaking, which is similar to your Steam download region. So I just like I did a test when Sunbreak and like Rise came out on PlayStation and Xbox. I was timing joining an event quest on Switch, PlayStation, Xbox, and Steam. And Switch and PlayStation used to like get me into events the fastest. Steam and Xbox were like super slow. So my main save for Monster Hunter Rise and Sunbreak ended up being on Switch. So I'm like happily gonna like revisit that so I can, just jump into events and play with my regular group over there. And Stories 2 is an interesting thing. Like the game isn't perfect on Steam Deck, but if the Switch version, like Colin said, it's 60 FPS, right? I can't wait to see that myself. Like if you can just brute force that and fix it. Again, my main save for Monster Hunter Stories 2 is also on Switch. So that's one thing. With Witcher 3, it has cross save, so it's not a huge deal where my save is. I can just move it around. But since I played so much of that, I was like, yeah, this is also something I need to see for myself because it was one of those quote unquote miracle ports. So you can see like if you brute force what happens to it. So yeah. And I actually was trying to put this list together before we knew what was happening with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet because never in my wildest dreams did I think they'd do like 60 FPS target and improved visuals and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm very happy that so far whatever games I mentioned they do seem to have improvements. No one's really tested Three Houses though. I think I'm gonna like work on that maybe when I get mine. So yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
that's the
actually
one
testing
on the
that later.
list that I look at that I know the least about. You were going to try that out, Nathan?
Yeah, I think I might give that a try and see if there are any Switch 2 improvements for Three Houses. It wasn't listed, so I'm not sure if there is, but I'm gonna see if the resolution's better.
Yeah, maybe not bespoke improvements or like a Switch 2 patch, but maybe it'll just run better on the better hardware. And back when it came out in early 2023, whenever Engage came out, we kind of always talked about how Engage looked excellent, one of the best looking base Switch games, but Three Houses never really was. So it's really kind of interesting to see how that one would look on the Switch 2. And then Nathan, I know that you've got to head out soon before we go into like the heavy end of the news. So thank you for your comments on your Switch 2 launch experience, especially revisiting older games, some for the first time on the new hardware. Did you have any other final comments before you head out?
Not especially, but for Junior, I'm glad to see that we're getting some more Rune Factory fans because I love to see the series get bigger and get a bigger fan base going. So happy to see that you're going to continue your Rune Factory journey.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for hopping on, Nathan. And we'll talk to you next time.
All right, thanks for having me on, guys. Let's have a good one.
Yep. And then before we go into news, just a couple more features. We have one here from Dave Francisco, who was able to get a preview opportunity with Zenless Zone Zero 2.0. I have not read this because I'm not really interested in the Hoyo space, but he had high thoughts on it, but he wasn't able to see a lot of the story stuff, so he didn't have much comments on that. So, but he was able to talk about the new area and how the region looks like and how it's represented in kind of like the urban fantasy interpretation of Zenless Zone Zero. So again, kind of like a preview opportunity that he had for 2.0, and thinks that it might be a strong enough kind of refresh to get lapsed players back online for a game that Hoyo has explicitly said has kind of underperformed their expectations. So we'll see if 2.0 is kind of a shot in the arm for that game for Hoyoverse. Chow, you gonna play Zenless Zone Zero with 2.0?
No.
Okay. I knew
But
you'd
never
say that.
touched
Is
I
that your
think-
favorite game?
When it first came out, I just thought, this game is everything I do not like, in general, right? It's like it's not the kind of game made for me. I hate what do you even call it? It's like an action zone RPG. It's like it's not
Yeah.
it's not the thing for me, right?
And unfortunately, our site doesn't really have a big Zenless Zone Zero, I don't know, evangelist, so to speak. We have people who play Genshin. We have people who got a few at least on the site, at least on the general chat, that play Star Rail. But ZZZ seems to kind of fall off. So if you're a big fan of ZZZ specifically, I encourage you, just email us at staff and see if you want to write about it.
Yeah, we got quite the fan base on our Mobitch channel. Like
Oh,
lots
for
of people
ZZZ?
talk about. Yeah, lots of people talk
Oh,
about
okay.
it. It's one of the
Oh,
more
okay.
popular titles in there. It's just that the staff here just doesn't like it, so that's why we don't talk about it, right? One of my favorite Mobitch games is Grand Blue. It's like, but no one talks about it because everyone's all into Fate, which is a game I despise with a passion, right? So,
The last thing we
yeah,
have here, Chow, is actually related to you. So obviously, one of the games that is a new release that we haven't really focused on, I forget who on site's been playing it. I think Adam, and maybe you just now got your hands on it, but Bravely Default Flying Fairy, the remaster for Switch 2. You have covered kind of a bare bones walkthrough in the same style as the Lunar guide that you wrote or the Suikoden guide that Adam wrote. You have that up on the site. You specifically wrote it for the 3DS version of the game. And obviously, over the coming weeks, we'll look at the HD version. Some of the things that we didn't quite know ahead of time, like the new mini games, the rewards for those, accessing 0% encounter rate through an accessory. We still don't know exactly how that works, but we do have the Bravely Default Flying Fairy walkthrough up on the site as well, and we'll tweak it up to cover the remaster over the next couple weeks as we get hands-on time with that.
Yeah, I was asked to cover the game. I'm like, well, I don't have the game, but I did it on the 3DS, so this is the best I could put out with. I didn't want to write any boss strategies because it's, a bare minimum walkthrough. I got a comment on the Lunar guide. It's like, you didn't put any strategies on how to kill bosses or whatever. It's like, it's a bare minimum guide. I don't need to do that, right?
Well, I think it's more just like, whenever you go over, as someone who hasn't written as many guides as like you or Adam, but has written a few, you say, well, how I did it was this, but there's also like 3, 4, 5 other viable strategies, and I don't want to tell you what to do. So just, you can implement whatever strategy you want on the boss. I believe in you.
I also think this is a pretty bad game for writing boss strategies because everybody has like a different job combinations to beat bosses, and you're like, well, I use the thief, and this guy's like, no, I don't know, the ranger or some shit, and you're like, okay, it's like, but which is the better one? I don't know. That's up to the player, right?
Well, that's when you just Bravely Default 2, you just use the thief's like speed shot attack or whatever it's called. So-
God, something.
Godspeed
Godspeed
strike.
strike.
Yeah, so yeah, just use that over and over again. That's the only strategy that counts. But yeah, you have the Bravely Default Flying Fairy walkthrough step-by-step guide up on the site. All right, well, this will go into news. There's a lot of news, and this is going to be like a combination of the State of Play and the Summer Games Fest. I tried to order this kind of in general with like the heavy hitters, the big topics first, and then kind of like the interesting in our purview second, and then covering like sales and dates as we normally do third and last. So not specifically covering State of Play and then Summer Games Fest like in a chronological order. This is just the last 7 days of news. I will say though, just like obviously when they're back from the trip to LA, we'll talk to Adam, James, and Josh about their experience at Summer Games Fest. You know, the time they're meeting up with Alex and other contemporaries. But for us here stuck at home, so to speak, I am curious to like just kind of throw it out to the cast here. Like, what are your thoughts? I think for Summer Games Fest, just to tee it up, not to poison the well, but we're always kind of like we hope to be surprised. There's not a long pedigree or precedent to have like a really excellent show, at least for our coverage, but usually have one or two things that we really are happy to have seen. I'm curious about your thoughts. Maybe Mikhail first. Just watching Summer Games Fest, writing up most of the news for us. Were you surprised at what you saw? Underwhelmed? How did you come away from it?
So, like, I'm gonna talk about it from general, not just like for RPGs and stuff.
Okay.
So, I have like negative or zero expectations from Sony events because like I play a lot on PS5 in general, but they don't really show a lot of the games I care about. Like they focus on the stuff which sells a lot, and that's usually not something which I'm interested in. So I just thought, okay, State of Play, good for them. It's probably gonna have like 5 games I know about, maybe Death Stranding 2, maybe the new Ghost of Yotei, and then like an indie or two, and then some PS VR too. I don't really care about VR, so I didn't stay up for it because it was like 3 a.m. my time or something. When I woke up and I looked at my work email and I saw the articles on the site, I was like, okay, Sony has like a good event. This is probably like the best event they've done since like PlayStation Experience in like 2017 or 2016 and stuff because they showed a lot of Japanese games. They showed a lot of smaller games in general, interesting games. So I was very impressed with that. Usually from these events, I come away with maybe 2 or 3 games I would wishlist or like, want to buy. I think from the Sony show, there were 7 or 8 that I wanted, which usually never happens. So I was very impressed with that showing. Beyond that, so what happens is sometimes a lot of these the hosts for some of these showcases they let the media experience them or watch them beforehand to prep news. So I got to see the Day of the Devs and the Wholesome Direct showcases like a little while ago. So I knew what those had, and the Day of the Devs actually is my favorite showcase of this quote unquote E3 season, with some of the indies which they've shown and just the general pacing. The one which I am 8-bit hosts, they hosted a few times a year. So the Day of the Devs Summer Game Fest 2025 showcase was my favorite. Like I think there were 10 indie games which I wishlisted after watching that, and very happy with that. Then the Wholesome Showcase had a few games I like. They released a few like shadow drops and stuff, including a mouse Picross game. Like Nintendo owns the Picross like branding or whatever, which is like nonogram puzzles. But there's one which just released on Steam and Switch. It's called Squeakross or something like that. I don't know what the name is. It's basically a Picross game with mice, so it's pretty funny that. And the Summer Game Fest, I didn't watch it live, but it seemed like a complete waste of time for my personal taste, except for the Street Fighter 6 and the Project Century, which is the new game from RGG Studio, which is now called Stranger Than Heaven. Or I've already forgotten the name, and I wrote the news story
Yeah,
about
Stranger
this
Than
thing.
Heaven. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I got it right. So yeah, the Stranger Than Heaven, which RGG Studio revealed, and Street Fighter were my highlights, but I don't think 2 trailers can save a show. And I believe that that covers all the events. Like you said, we're recording this before the Future Game Show, before the PC Gaming Show, and before the Microsoft Showcase. So we'll see how those end up going on the next episode. But right now, I'd say the Day of the Devs followed by the Sony State of Play were my highlights for this season so far.
Junior, what were your thoughts, whether you watched it live or just caught the headlines after the fact, on the state of play and the Summer Games Fest, or any other streaming things that you watched in the last few days?
So first of all, my thoughts primarily are that Keeley Fest or Jeff Fest or whatever funny name you want to give it is it's kind of a band-aid at best, and actively detrimental at worst, for to kind of signify how the state of game development and just the general state of gaming is right now. Because that show, I only caught bits and pieces of it after the fact, but the bits and pieces I saw were mostly bad. It really felt more like Jeff Keighley coming up there and just showcasing like how cool of a guy he is with his friendship with Hideo Kojima, and look at these like games that paid $500,000 to get eyeballs on them. You know what I mean? Like it felt very hollow. Um, the games themselves, I mean, I'm a horror game nerd. I'm super excited for Ill. I'm super excited for Resident Evil Requiem. Um, but those are not RPGs. Although I am actually going to try and convince the editorial staff to maybe let me do a branching path or something on some of these games.
And, and you're not the first person I've seen share the sentiment about how the showing was very hollow, in sense that kind of felt overall as like really trying to glitz up something that doesn't have substance behind it. About the last 2 years have been, I mean, is catastrophic too sensationalist a word in terms of like dev stability, studio acquisition, layoffs, like those sorts of things? And it's just like,
not at all. Yeah.
and I've seen a lot of negative impressions about like Genshin slop or Souls like slop or like things like that. And I don't think it's individual digs at specific titles in most cases, though I'm sure it's true in some cases, but more in just the state of what is being platformed at shows like this. You kind of insinuated the cost of getting those things shown, what publishers are willing to back, while a lot of the more interesting titles that are being self-published or published with very small teams are like Mikhail was watching, like the Wholesome Direct, the Humble Direct, the Day of the Devs, those sorts of things. And not to just be hipster, but I think there's a lot of truth to that in terms of, the big studios. We're talking about EA, pushing anything that's not Madden or FIFA, aside for their big projects. They're not even publishing Wild Hearts on the Switch 2. That's just going to be directly published by Koei. And it's just like the purse holders are not, in my impression, not as a biz dev commenter, these are the sorts of games that they see as safe and will sell numbers, even if they're not the ones that are interesting to us in general.
The underlying, so I have a background in game development. I have a bachelor's in game design. I have to one video game, which is not obviously a lot, but I have worked a dev cycle, and I have contributed to a couple of projects, and it is very difficult right now to get a job in game development. I know it's difficult to get a job pretty much almost anywhere. Like we're, not to get too far away from our mission statement, but the economy not good, y'all.
Yeah.
But but in game development, especially in game design, it is very, very, very difficult to get a job. You're seeing a lot of people that used to work at these big box studios now suddenly attaching their names to smaller projects, or starting getting hired horizontally, or maybe even taking a pay downgrade to work on a project that maybe they weren't previously, you wouldn't think of them working with, simply because there's not enough studios hiring. There's too many developers and designers who all have a wonderful amount of talent, and not enough of these AAA studios are retaining their talent or keeping them around. There's a number of factors that are playing into this, but from my own personal experience, I've applied to a number of positions over the past couple years, and there's just been this hollowing out of talent. And so when you watch Summer Keeley Fest and you see Genshin Slop on the screen, you have to understand that those are the studios that have the money, and those are the games that are getting pushed because they saw the financials from Genshin Impact making $250 or whatever, and going, we want that. That's what we want. Ship it. Genshin
It's
looks
really-
like Genshin, plays like Genshin. Ship it.
It's really neat to have your perspective as someone who's has worked a dev cycle to speak to that, because a lot of us can kind of infer or speculate, but we don't have a direct experience having lived that to the extent that you have. So it's really appreciated to see the perspective.
I'm not I don't call myself a developer anymore. I'm a taxi driver now. I live in Kyoto, Japan. I'm a taxi driver because that's stable income. People are always going to need cars driving around this incredibly packed city that has too many tourists. That's my job now. I do not call myself a developer. I haven't worked a dev cycle in over a year now, and I haven't even loaded up Unreal Engine in forever, because there's just not enough. Some people are saying you can just make your own game, and I have literally, I'm staring at my binder right now that has a ton of unrealized ideas. But the problem is, it's always a gamble when you make your own game if you go indie, right? Because just think about how many games are on Steam right now.
Oh,
go
yeah,
to the indie, or go to the new release tab and just look. Each and every one of those games that has come out recently has a dev team of varying sizes, and they're all competing for your attention. And so just saying, oh, indie will save us, or oh, go indie, it's not the elixir that you think it is. It's very difficult to spend years of your life working on a passion project, hoping to see some sort of pay reward for it so you can feed your family, and that's why I always feel a little miffed when I watch Games Fest or whatever, because for every Genshin slop or Soul slop or whatever you see on the screen, there's 100 other titles that a fraction of the marketing budget could have gone towards to help them out, and instead we're getting Jeff Keighley showing off his sneakers and humble bragging about how much of a friend he is to Hideo Kojima. And I would be remiss if I didn't end at least with this statement. That Splitgate CEO guy that came on the stage with that incredibly stupid hat.
Yeah.
Dude, I will never touch Splitgate 2 now. I don't care. I was mildly interested at first, but I'm not playing your game. I'm sorry. Your hat was actually that repellent.
Nope, and that totally valid, and I've seen that sentiment shared. And I don't know what Splitgate 2 is, but I've seen the hat, and I'm like, well, I'm not interested in that project.
It is definitely far away from our mission statement of RPGs, but it's just a bland FPS. The first one was pretty good, and then they shut it down because they had to make a new one, and they said, "Oh, we want to go back to the Halo days. We miss how older FPSs were back in the day," and then they churn out battle royale slop.
Chow, what have your thoughts been on either State of Play or Summer Games Fest or anything from the last 7 days? You can, whether or not you paid attention, watch them live or followed up after the fact or whatever.
I watched a State of Play live, but I did not really follow the Summer Game Fest too much. It's I was just working when it aired, and so every time I watch it, it's oh yeah, it's I see some bits of it. It's oh, this is Genshin slop. I do not care for this shit. I already have my dose of Genshin. Spending way too much money and time on it. I don't want more of it. So that's kind of my boat with those kind of games these days. The State of Play was great. I actually like a lot of games they show there, even the new Bond. Even though I'm not big into James Bond, but I do know from my past experience with Bond games, right? And the thing I also like was there's an arcade stick. It's somehow the most anticipated product for me as an official arcade stick from Sony. Out of all these things, right?
Mikhail,
Go
you had
ahead,
a comment?
Yeah, the arcade stick, I actually forgot about that when you asked me about my thoughts because, yeah, like as someone who got into arcade sticks and owns too many of them now since the last few years, when I saw that, I was like, I'm a bit confused, but I'm also happy that we're getting like a first party arcade controller. But the problem with how these things work is their announcement. I think they said they partnered with Markman, who's like famous in the FGC for his work on Evo and like in general just doing a lot for it. So it seems like they're like working on it the right way, but I think the announcement for it, besides how good it looks, they didn't actually reveal much of what people who buy arcade sticks now would want to know. Like, I don't care about the price right now, that's secondary. They didn't say anything about like what parts they're using, like the modability, replaceable stuff, what stick they're using, what lever they're using, and stuff like that. So I've seen like I've been talking to a few friends of mine, including a friend of mine who basically taught me arcade stick modding. So I asked her what she thought about this, and she said it looks nice, but knowing Sony, it'll be expensive. And knowing Sony, we don't know what you can mod with it. So, like, I don't want to go too much into a tangent onto this arcade stick thing, but looks good. But I don't know. It's too soon to say what happens, and I feel like they're using a layout which some would consider outdated for fighting games now. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. But I'm always up for trying out a new arcade controller. So I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, back to you, Chow.
Yeah, we're in the same boat. We bought a lot of game controllers. It's like there's
Yeah.
a hitbox coming in the way. But yeah, so the state of play was the most like exciting thing for me. Obviously the Summer Game Fest had Resident Evil 9. I'm also big into Resident Evil as well. It's like I bought the RE4 remake day one, beat it. And
Same.
and obviously I did have it. I know that's blasphemy. It's one of the best Resident Evil games. A friend streamed the whole entire playthrough for me, so I'm just too lazy to like beat it for me personally, right? But yeah, it's like I think I'm very interested in seeing where like Resident Evil 9 goes, even though it's probably out of our coverage. But we could just I don't know, tell Alex is like, hey, they have I don't know, maybe RPG mechanics or something with weapon building or something like that with
So
merchant.
yeah, so I actually have a master plan for that. I'm going to make a PowerPoint. I'm going to go rave detail. I got it. I got it. I got it.
Obviously, it's like everyone's going to be talking about the Final Fantasy Tactics
Spoilers.
remaster.
I'm just kidding.
It's the great. It's one of the greatest Final Fantasy that's not numbered, and it's like I'm excited to see it on another platform again that's not on the PSP or iOS. So I'm not sure anyone else played Final Fantasy Tactics
Well, I'm a
in
huge fan
here.
of the War of the Lions PSP version. So actually, I'll just use that to kind of segue into our news. So most of the biggest headlines, normally when a state of play is announced, there's a different vibe internal to RPG site. When a Nintendo Direct is announced, it's like the "It's Happening" GIF or whatever, because we know there's going to be lots of, Square Enix loves to show their projects at Nintendo Directs. Nintendo themselves has a lot of RPG properties, things like that. State of plays have really been kind of light on our site's coverage for a while now. Every once in a while, you hope to see the Square Enix make a presence, but over the last few years, it's not been as common as it used to be. But probably the biggest headline from the state of play is, of course, the announcement of the Final Fantasy Tactics remaster remake. We can talk about that. Um, this is long rumored. It's like I think the last domino from the long, however many years ago, Nvidia leak that a Final Fantasy Tactics remaster was in the works. That everything else from that leak had come to fruition, and that was kind of like the last holdout. So I don't think this truly
FF9.
surprised. Oh yeah, FF9's on there too. So I guess there's one more. But the announcement of Final Fantasy Tactics: The Ivalice Chronicles was shown at the State of Play. It is launching not too long from now, September 30th, for not only the PlayStation consoles, but Switch 2, PC, and even Xbox. Now, following the news for this, like I said, I didn't watch it live, but there's a lot of questions that immediately pop up right away. Is it based on the original version of War of the Lions? What are they adding? And potentially, what are they taking away? We've got answers to a few of those things in the days since the announcement, but not absolutely everything. In fact, before we started recording, I'm like, I want to make sure I got the details right about what we explicitly know and what we think we know but isn't confirmed. So here's what we know. It does have the cutscenes, like the pencil sketch style cutscenes from the PSP version. It has voice acting and a revised script of some fashion. We know this because one of the voiceovers in the dialogue is a pretty, I don't know if famous is the right word, but a key line that is often used to juxtapose the original script and the War of the Lions script. The original line kind of became a meme, was Delita saying, "Blame yourself or God." And then the revised script in War of the Lions being something like, "'Tis your faith and birth that wronged you, not I." But now we kind of have a third contender where in the voiceover, when it talks about the new voice actors, says, "Blame yourself or the father." So basically it sounds like, we have a third script, or at least a touched up version of the original script. It's not 100% clear. We also know, based on some press release assets from Square Enix themselves, that the game will ship with a classic mode and an enhanced mode. And this is what surprised me, is that not only is this a visual toggle, like the enhanced mode, there's a new turn order icon, there's kind of new UI elements, etc. There's new font, where the classic mode takes away all those new elements, but also it says is paired with the renowned, this is their wording, not mine, War of the Lions translation. So this is what I thought was surprising, is that you have this classic and enhanced toggle, but it also seems to toggle the script, because the War of the Lions, there's no voice acting or limited voice acting. The enhanced version, there's full voice acting, and we also know the cast and all that stuff. So I wonder if in the final release, if we have any knowledge about whether those things can be decoupled, or if it's you play the classic as it was in War of the Lions, or you play the enhanced, which is a new script. That's how it seems to be to me, but it hasn't been like fully confirmed yet.
I think one of the strangest thing I see is like that picture that they show where they're comparing enhanced and classic. There is adjustment to the story. Like, what adjustment could there possibly be? Do they just mean more content? I
Yeah,
don't know.
they say extensive additions and adjustments to the story, and that kind of brings up another point, is that these are kind of like, obviously a contemporary is the pixel remasters. Of course, those are a few years old now, but they famously don't have the additions from the Game Boy Advance versions of those games. Those are touched up versions of the originals. So in a sense, they're not really definitive in that way. So people are wondering, well, this, not the biggest loss if they're gone, but is the enhanced version going to have Balthier and Luzo and all the stuff that was added to the PSP version? I saw some people scrutinizing the class like rosters and seeing like there's no slot for Onion Knight and Dark Knight, which were PSP editions. And I've only played the War of the Lions version, so I don't really have a context for like how significant, if these are truly gone, would be. But it also
I
just
think they're
kind of,
kind of pointless, to be honest. I played both versions. I do not like the PSP version as much as the PlayStation 1 version, to be honest with you, just because of they never fix like the slowdowns when using like
right. The PSP version is
you
infamous for
literally
the
have to
slow
hack the
down.
game. Yeah, you
Yeah.
literally have to hack the game to get rid of that. And the patch is only like 30 kilobytes, which tells me like, Square, you could have done a lot better doing this, but games shipped in those days would never get patched, right? So what can you do, right? But I just
I'm
want to
just
say
playing it on iPhone.
iPhone.
Yeah.
PS1 version, baby. I'm also one of those sickos that prefer the PS1 translation over the War of the Lions translation, which is more straightforward and simple. I know some people don't seem to like that, but that's kind of like my thing of thinking. It's like I just like things that are direct. You don't have to like write like a whole paragraph explaining a very simple like synonym or something like that. That's kind of like me when it comes to localization, even though it has no flavor, right?
When I first played War of the Lions, I really liked the translation, and I still like it, but I think I was younger and more impressionable and like, wow, this is artistic. But then I played Tactics Ogre, Let Us Cling Together, which kind of goes for a similar vibe, but nails it a bit better. And that was always kind of my go-to. And then I played Unicorn Overlord, of course, last year, which also went for that, and it fell flat for me for like the really flowery poetic language. And I think it can work, and I still think it works pretty well for War of the Lions, personal opinion, but I'm kind of over it, I suppose. But you have this classic and enhanced toggle here, so you can kind of have it your way. For some of the voice actors, actually, I don't have the list up in front of me
But
quite now, so let me pull it up.
I think the thing that got my attention was Ben Starr is in here and he's playing Dice Dark, the
Yeah.
scumbag of Final Fantasy Tactics. If everyone knows who this guy is, this is Rams's brother, his older brother. And having Ben Starr as playing as him is a choice. So I'm curious to hear what he sounds like in this. So
Brianna White and Cody Christian are confirmed for reprising their roles as Aerith and Cloud, who have cameos in the game, so that makes sense. Some of these other names I don't recognize, but Hannah Melbourne is Agrias, Timothy Watson is Thunder God Sid. Ramza is Joe Pitts. I am not familiar with the name.
I do familiar that Timothy Watson is Ranjay in Final Fantasy 14 for anyone who plays it, and he also voiced a lot of like minor NPCs in Final Fantasy 14. So the Final Fantasy 14 fans are eating with this. So.
Oh, that does remind me. This was Creative Studio 3 on this game, so that kind of makes sense that you see some of the Final Fantasy 14, 16 crossover in terms of some talent there and who they've worked with. So that was kind of, I know that Creative Business Studio 3 or Studio 3 or whatever they're called now, obviously is 14, 16, and then their two smaller projects were this, Final Fantasy Tactics, the remaster, and then the Fantasian console release was also under them. So I think as of, unless I'm forgetting something, I don't think we have really any hint of what Creative Studio 3 is now working on, because it was kind of, these were the two things they were working on. And I don't know what's in the pipe for them from this point forward. So that's kind of exciting in its own way that we're kind of back to unknown state, unless they're on Final Fantasy IX Remaster. Of course, not officially announced. But I'm just happy to have Final Fantasy Tactics available on modern platforms. Just get it on PC, play it on Steam Deck, play it on your computer, etc.
Could you tell Square to remake Parasite Eve, please?
Oh God, yeah. Hey, Square, remake Parasite Eve and Parasite Eve 2, and
Yeah, we know you listen to this.
Yeah, and make a version of Third Birthday that also isn't bad. Thank you.
I think none of those. I can't remember if those were available digitally on PSN in North America.
They
I
were.
think I have Parasite Eve. Okay. I
Yeah.
don't know if the third birthday, if I have that or not, but when you brought up the Tactics PS1, I feel like I own the PS1 and PSP versions on Vita because I remember buying one of them for like $6 and one of them was like, I think War of the Lions was like 15 or 20 or some nonsense back then. I don't know, like I think they might have delisted some of them right now, but I'll probably check that out because I will be playing the Tactics remaster thing which they're doing on a few platforms. So I want to revisit the game and I will try the PS1 version as well. But yeah, I need to check what I own on Vita. Haven't looked at that in a while. So yeah.
I have to admit something to I guess besmirch my gamer cred. But I have actually never played Final Fantasy Tactics. I've played
Oh,
Tactics Advance.
no! Please don't play that.
Please don't play Final Fantasy Tactics. Oh, okay.
Not Advance. Play Tactics, please.
I'm a fan of both. I like both, but Final Fantasy Tactics, like, it's stuck on the PSP, so it's one of those things where it's like, do you still have a PSP that your battery hasn't exploded yet? I don't. So like, that's why I say I'm happy to like have it on a modern platform or in a digital space.
I don't know. I feel like I'm the bad guy in Final Fantasy Tactics Advance. I disagree with the protagonist's viewpoint. I hate him. He has everything happy going for him. Of course, he wants to go back home. You know?
Well, okay, sure, but for me, I'm more progression minded than anything. Like the story is whatever, but the Tactics Advance progression, like the job system, and that was really cool. I really liked it when I played it on Game Boy Advance years ago, and I understand that it's kind of like a modified, perhaps lesser version of Tactics regular. So I'm excited to play Tactics.
No,
Yeah,
I'm with you.
Tactics.
I played Tactics Advance before Tactics, and I still like it more. Maybe you like your first the best potentially. Another game that I would love to see a dual pack with those two games, Tactics Advance 2, um, on Steam or eShop or wherever. I would buy those in a heartbeat.
I was gonna say, so Chow, do you which game do you like less, Chrono Cross or Tactics Advance?
Chrono Cross in a heartbeat.
Okay.
I absolutely despise that game, and I hope it fails every time it releases. But it doesn't. Everyone always praise it. It's like the god tier games, but I hate it. The only redeeming factor of that game is the music.
I heard they announced a sequel, Chrono Odyssey. It was shown at Games Fest.
That's a Korean MMO.
Damn
That's a nice segue.
Now we're moving into my territory.
Well, I actually don't have that on here, but I can put it on here. You being because for us, for the normal discussion in the MMO space, it's kind of Final Fantasy 14 because we don't have someone currently playing 11 or Elder Scrolls or things like that. So, but the next topic I have here is a game that I think some of us expected and we're excited to see, but the feedback has been a little bit mixed, though it's early, and that is the announcement from Koei Tecmo of Nioh 3. So Nioh 3 coming worldwide for PC and PlayStation 5, so both at the same time in early 2026. I know for a lot of us, Nioh 2 placed really highly on our Game of the Year list back in 2020, I believe. I'm trying to remember when Nioh 2 was. Yeah, 2020, at least for the PlayStation version, because it was console exclusive for a bit. And then we've talked about the Nioh team making Wolong and Rise of the Ronin, at least to some extent. Of course, teams are very malleable, and who knows like how much talent is maintained from project to project. But we were always wondering, like, is there going to be followed up on in an actual Nioh 3? And Nioh 3 was announced at the State of Play. The big kicker, for better or for worse, is that they did announce that Nioh 3 is going to be taking place on an open world map, on an open map, where Nioh 1 and 2 were both kind of like menu based in terms of selecting bespoke little arcadey levels that you would progress through and then return to for like optional objectives. Nioh 3 seems to, by all intents and purposes, be following in the wake of Rise of the Ronin, which was more of an open world take on the same idea, which I know some people really didn't want to see that. They thought Nioh had a good balance going on, and people aren't sold on the open world concept for this style of game. Mikhail, do you have a comment?
Yeah, so firstly, the fact that it's being handled by Koei Tecmo and not Sony, like what happened with Nioh 1 and Nioh 2, Sony was like publishing the game in outside Japan and outside Asia, and it was like PlayStation only for like I think 9 months or 6 months or something like that. Then with Rise of the Ronin, Sony actually published it in Japan, like worldwide. It was a PlayStation Studios game. So I just thought, like, if we ever get another Neo, that'll happen here. But now it's coming to Steam day one as well. And the open world thing. Initially, I was kind of annoyed that they were doing it because with Rise of the Ronin, they didn't have the tech for it. It needed more time. It needed like, but then when you have a developer trying something new and it doesn't really work out, you assume that when they do it the next time, they learn their lessons and improve it. But I think with Neo 3 can sort of be its own thing with, like when you think about Neo 1 and 2, I don't see any reason why anyone should ever play Neo 1 if like they're getting into the franchise. I just tell them to play Neo 2 directly because it's just Neo 1 but better in every way. But Neo 3 could be its own thing where you can have both coexisting together with the structure and with, like what it's doing story wise and stuff. But I think the main takeaway is, yeah, the open world thing, we'll have to see how it goes. I haven't tried the demo yet because there's a PlayStation 5 exclusive like demo for a limited time. I haven't tried that yet. But I'm happy it's coming to PC day one because they can focus and like there's no like, whenever you have an exclusive now, you always have like people who are like, oh, I'll just wait for this. Like we're seeing it with Bravely Default as well. People have been like saying Square Enix said they're done with exclusives, but now they're doing another exclusive. I'll just wait for like a PlayStation or Steam version and stuff like that. So now it's like just going to be, oh, it's on the same platforms both Neo games were eventually. So everyone can just play it at the same time or whatever. So I should download the demo. In fact, I might do that after we finish recording. So I'm just very excited for it because I adore Neo 2. It's like one of my favorite games of all time. So I can't wait to see what they do with this. Just not had time to download the demo with like a billion news stories and stuff.
And
So
we're going
yeah.
into like the Summer Games Fest time where there's going to be, or sorry, Steam Next Fest time, which kind of overlaps in some extents, where a lot of the humble games and Day of the Dev games will kind of utilize that to get their game on the Steam available for demo. So we're gonna have a lot of demos to talk about in the next month or so as those all go live. Go ahead, Junior.
Yeah, so I also haven't played the demo yet. I do feel kind of skeptical on Koei Tecmo demos because I'm sitting here back to like Strangers of Paradise, the Final Fantasy Neo game, where that demo slash beta alpha whatever it was bad, like it was real bad, and then I got the full game and it was good. Something about Koei Tecmo demos tend to be unfinished or unpolished, or not a accurate representation of the final product. And I don't know how that's possible, but they're the only company that this has happened with. Because I also remember the Nioh 2, or was it Nioh 1 demo? A Nioh demo that I played. I can't remember which one it was. That also I was kind of like lukewarm on, and then I turned around and played the final product. And I was like, oh, this is actually pretty good.
With Neo 1, where I think that was with Neo 1, where they had like an alpha or something where they changed some of the mechanics quite a bit. I think some people like the alpha because it was massively more challenging. I forgot what they changed though. I think it was either upgrading something or there's something, but I
Yeah,
know that there are people who said something, or maybe it was the weapon degradation, or I literally can't remember, but I know what you're talking about. But I think they call those as like early alpha tests or something like that. I don't know what they've called the Neo 3 one. But I know it is a limited time thing though, which is annoying. I don't like this FOMO stuff. It's kind of like, like Brian brought up Steam Neckfest. I wish the devs would just let you like, release the demo and like let me add it to my account and play it whenever. Because the last time they did one of these things, I added like 5 game demos to my account. And when I went to play them, I had them installed, but it wouldn't let me boot them up. It just said purchase the game or whatever. I don't like that because like it's a very busy season for like covering stuff, and with Switch 2, I might not have time to play some of the demos. So yeah.
They do call it an alpha demo for what it's worth. Yeah. A few other trailers here that some of these were a surprise and some of these we kind of expected. I'm not sure how much dialogue we're going to get on each of these, so I'll just kind of go through them. We do have a follow-up for a game that ended up, I think, being pretty successful, and we've spoken to on the podcast a few times. This is Bloodstained, the Scarlet Engagement, obviously following Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. This is releasing for PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, and PC in 2026. It had an announcement trailer, both in English and Japanese. And obviously very much in the vein of Symphony of the Night era Castlevania. So kind of not really RPG-ish, but kind of in that we've covered them in the past sort of thing, in terms of having some similar-ish DNA. Has anyone here played Bloodstained or feel strongly about the announcement of the Scarlet Engagement? Go ahead, Junior.
Me, yes. I have 100%ed Bloodstained. I have done the optional bosses. I would actually quibble a little bit with what you said. It is actually an RPG.
Oh, okay.
There are stats, mechanics, different gear influences, not just like your attack type, because like a spear has longer range than a short sword or whatever. But you can equip gear specifically to increase like int for magic casting, or you can better your strike damage. Yeah, it is very much an Igavania. The first Bloodstained there was another Bloodstained that was closer to like Castlevania Super Nintendo like play, which I didn't really gel with too much because those are less,
They're
they're
different,
more,
yeah.
they're different. They're more linear. But yeah, I was very excited to see this. Bloodstained was genuinely my favorite Igavania that wasn't a Castlevania, if that makes sense. So yeah, very, very excited for the sequel.
Cool. I'm glad we were able to
I'm
get you on the
surprised it's not on
podcast.
Switch 2 though.
Oh, right. Yeah. It's PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. So no Nintendo console for this announced.
Because the first game ran like dog shit on Switch. Like I remember I paid the most for that version and it's absolutely awful. That's actually one game I should try on Switch too, because it was just awful on Switch 1.
This next one, I think a lot of people kind of rumored or speculated and kind of got their guesses right. We knew that, or we had high belief that Namco Bandai was going to be showing an RPG property. I still call them Namco Bandai Namco. And some people said, well, it's been a while since we've seen anything from the God Eater Code Vein team. So Code Vein 2, guess what? Code Vein 2. So yeah, Code Vein 2 was announced. It is slated to release in 2026 for PlayStation 5, Xbox Series S and X, and PC. Yeah, we got a new announcement trailer for it. It mostly was just an announcement that it exists, and not a game that I've played, but I know a lot of people thought really pretty highly of it as kind of one of those early Souls, like obviously with an anime aesthetic as well. Anyone here play Code Vein or excited and eager to revisit for the sequel, Code Vein 2?
Yes, yeah, it was actually my favorite Souls like that wasn't a Souls game. It's weird to say that twice about two different games in two different
No,
genres,
it's
but yeah,
Adam. When he's on the
I'm
podcast,
with
he plays a lot of these Souls like that aren't from from software or whatever you call like the OG. I'm not sure if he's played Code Vein though. Go ahead, Mikhail.
Yeah, I'm with Junior on this. Like before I played Lies of P, Code Vein was my favorite, like Souls like not from FromSoft or whatever. So I enjoyed the art style. I like the music a lot. Gameplay was good. I thought I thought some of the attacks or in general the combat lacked the punch or the weight you'd want. Like maybe I wanted more weapon feedback and stuff like that. I think that was my main complaint with it. I never played the DLC though. I remember like buying the overpriced season pass, but I never ended up playing the DLC. And I think this was one of the games which taught me to not buy DLC unless I'm like actively playing a game. It's just a waste of money otherwise. But I'm excited for Code Vein 2. I want to see what they do with hopefully they address some of these issues with it. And I think some of the level design was also a little weak in the original, but the story was good, the aesthetic was nice, music was nice, and the main mechanics were also nice, just lacked a bit of polish you'd expect. So hopefully a sequel can address that. And I'll definitely be there day one for this one. So
yeah,
in
same.
fact, if Neo 3 wasn't coming out, I would have said Code Vein 2 is probably going to be like, for satiating that itch of mine next year. But we'll see. Like, the more the merrier, I guess. Like, sequels to games I enjoyed, like, happy to have them.
It is crazy though. I know Steam is not the arbiter of truth, but like the reviews for Code Vein on Steam, mostly positive. Every single of the 4 DLCs, mostly negative, very negative, very negative. So I'm not exactly sure what those DLCs did, but apparently wasn't well received in general. But
It
Code
might
Vein
have been
2,
like the Euden Chronicle overpriced,
yeah,
like, it's usually how these things are.
those are another ones where like I don't hear any good things about those Aiden Chronicle DLCs, but I'm morbidly curious in a way. I've heard they're very short, blissfully. Mortal Shell 2. So this game, whenever we cover Souls likes, I try to find their one distinguishing feature so that I can kind of pull them apart from each other. I know I've used that same language before in this podcast. Mortal Shell makes it very tricky. It just, to me, it feels very much playing Parakeet. We did have a reviewer review Mortal Shell 1 back in 2019. It was 2020. It was George Foster, and he was pretty positive on it. He gave it an 8. Mortal Shell 2, I'm watching this announcement trailer for it, and it's got like this very grungy, screamy, heavy music trying to fit the vibe of this very gothic, dark aesthetic. But it to me, there's nothing about it that really like puts this on the list. There's, in terms of like my personal, am I interested in this? The answer is honestly no. Does anyone here have any real interest in Mortal Shell 2?
I mean, so I reviewed Lords of the Fallen
Okay.
not too long ago. Well, or whenever that game came out. And when you see a lot of games that are trying to mimic or emulate the Souls, success, I suppose, um, I think a lot of them like to skip over the um, interesting uh, progression and design that the Souls games typically have. I didn't play Mortal Shell 1. I will probably play Mortal Shell 2 just to see what it's about, but just from what they've shown, I genuinely have like passing interest at most with this.
But it is releasing in 2026, PlayStation, Xbox, PC. So I have no idea when in 2026 these games are all going to land. I guess I was trying to think, did one of them say specifically early? My guess is that usually, based on Adam can speak to this more strongly than I can, based on like the fiscal years for these publishers, a lot of them try to get out before that end of March timeframe because that's when like the fiscal years end and they want to get the revenue boost before going into the next fiscal year. So I wouldn't be surprised if at least one of these, or maybe two of them, land in like that Q1 era. But I'm making sure I'm reading the press releases carefully. That these all just say, by all I mean Bloodstained, Mortal Shell, and Code Vein 2, 2026 worldwide, without, as far as I can tell, a specific release window specified. here's the one that you brought up earlier, Mikhail. So announced previously, I forget exactly where it was shown, but we knew that RGG Studio was working on a new project, a new IP at the time, known as Project Century. And I remember we got a very quick like teaser trailer for it. We didn't quite understand the vibe. We had some internal discussions here at RPG Site. They were like, "Is this an RPG?" And speaking of like, is it an RPG or not? Uh, Yakuza is another one that's kind of in that fringe category. Same with like Zelda. You could argue same with like different types of interpretations of Castlevania. Whether or not we cover it as a site is not a declaration either way. There are some games that we just cover because we have the audience for it, we have the staff interest for it, etc. And RGG Studios is kind of in that same vein. We have a lot of people here who love the Yakuza games, the Judgment games, etc. And we're always interested in what RGG Studios is working on. They've re-revealed Project Century as Stranger Than Heaven during the Game Awards. And we got a kind of an introduction. They call it a teaser trailer, so kind of a second one. Its first trailer under its new title. It shows some sort of things that are kind of like emulating what gameplay might look like, that there's no UI elements or anything like that. It feels very like noir jazz-ish, like set in like early 1900s fictional universe, maybe. I haven't dug through like developer diaries to see specifically like any other information about the setting, but it does seem very much, at least from the perspective that I have looking at the trailer, more visual novel kind of esque focused in terms of storytelling, though it still does have like the brawler combat feel that the Judgment games have. So, Mikhail, I don't know if you had any other takeaways from what you saw from RGG Studios when they re-revealed Stranger Than Heaven at SGF.
Yeah, so there was something I didn't like, it didn't click until like a few hours after I published the news story, actually. So we skipped the original covering it because it was shown at the Game Awards, and because for some reason Sega didn't upload the trailer, like the initial reveal for the Project Century. They didn't upload it on any of their channels. And there was just like this low quality stream recording back then, or I think it was posted on Twitter. So for some reason, I think in the mix, we just like decided to wait for an official trailer, and that never came. But then what happened now is at Summer Game Fest, they showed Project Century. Like they had a new trailer, and they revealed the name as Stranger Than Heaven. Some dialogue. We saw like, I guess, the protagonist. We saw some more brawler combat. But what I didn't put two and two together with was the trailer which they showed at the Game Awards was like, I think it was 1915 or 1913, the setting, but what they showed now at Summer Game Fest was like 1945, and the protagonist seems to be the same person going by the scar and the artwork and stuff. So, and when you think about Project Century, that tells me that this might be like a story taking place across a century, right? That makes sense. So I didn't put like two and two together with that until a few hours after I published the news story. So that is interesting. I'm obviously up for whatever they do, because even if they release a game which I don't care for in some ways, like that Fist of the North Star spin-off, it was a little janky and stuff, but I still enjoyed it. This I'm the only thing I don't like about it is there's no release year or platforms list yet. Like that tells me it might be a 2027 game, maybe 2028, who knows at this point, because RGB Studio is also working on the new Virtua Fighter project, so who knows if they have the bandwidth for all of this. But it looks good. The storytelling so far, at least based on the short cutscenes we've seen, looks nice. Combat looks a little more brutal or like gruesome than I expect from them. Maybe they're going for like a more violent take with this one. But the like you brought up that jazzy feel, I think the atmosphere and vibe in both trailers is the highlight for sure for me. What do you think?
I was reading an IGN article from Rebecca Valentine, and she also brought up the fact, and I guess I had missed this too because we kind of glanced over Project Century, but yeah, the two time periods that are shown, 1915 and 1940s. So does that infer time traveling takes some sort of like anachronistic combination clashing of eras in this game? Rebecca's summary also talks about, imageries of like Americana versus Japan in this game. So it seems to be very kind of like deliberately out of place or out of time in some fashion. I'm sure if we go to like Reddit pages or RGG pages that people have really like slowed down the trailers and scrutinizing shot by shot and trying to piece it together. But right now it seems like it's a bit of an enigma about exactly like when it takes place. Is time travel a factor? To what extent is it like fiction fantasy versus historical fiction. So it's kind of like right now, I think we're kind of running on vibes for the two trailers, but the vibes are good. I guess that could be a podcast title. The vibes are pretty good for this one. And I'm always interested in
Yeah.
whatever RGT is working on in terms of like having a flair for both the dramatic and the silly in that sense. They don't always nail having those two in combination. But this right now seems like it's really leaning way towards the dramatic in terms of its cutscene direction, its combat direction, and things like that. So I'm all for it. Seems like it's a little bit ways out, which of course totally valid. We know that they're working on Virtual Fighter and things like that. A couple other little bits, pieces of news that were announced in the week. Also shown at Summer Games Fest was a free-to-play Sea of Remnants. And of course, whenever it's free to play, I don't know in terms of like monetization plans what that means. When the publisher for this is NetEase, I know that doesn't put a lot of people at ease. But they did have a presence with a pretty long trailer up at Summer Games Fest for Sea of Remnants. Going to be a PS5, Steam, and mobile release next year. An indie tactical RPG called Never's End was announced for PlayStation 5 and PC. Announcement trailer, no release date, but it does have some familiar talent on it. For instance, the character designer for this is Masayoshi Nishimura, who did the character designs for Triangle Strategy and Octopath Traveler. So we do have the Never's End announced trailer up on the site, and it's slated for, like I said, PC and PS5, though no release window given. We're going to just keep going forward into a few other trailers that were shown over the week. This one, James nailed it. I don't think he had prior knowledge, but he nailed it. Liza P. Overture, he already kind of gave his hands-on for it. I think he wrote up a preview for it. And he surmised, based on the information available, that it was likely going to be a shadow drop. And it was. So Adam wrote up the news story with the trailer. It's kind of like a time-traveling prequel for Lives of P, which we thought very highly of back when released in 2023. Was shadow dropped during the event and is available now.
They've discounted the base game for this to celebrate the DLC, at least on Steam. And usually when you have these big DLC or expansion releases, I kind of assume that the devs are gonna like have a discount if you own the original, so you can like do a complete your bundle or something like that. But despite owning Lies of P with all the DLC, like the digital art book and soundtrack, there's no discount for buying the expansion. It's like a full $30. So that's a little surprising. You'd expect like 5 or 10% off for these launches, but yeah, it's full price.
So here's one that I put on here because I was generally interested as someone who has not gotten into a new MMO in quite some time. And I joked about it earlier, but Kakao Games and Chrono Studio did release a new trailer for the upcoming Chrono Odyssey MMO, including talking about a closed beta test being available just for a weekend upcoming in June 20th to June 22nd. So as a resident MMO specialist, I'll put it like that. Did you have any interest in Chrono Odyssey? I don't know if this was in your purview or not in terms of the upcoming projects in this space versus this or like Crimson Desert or things like that.
Right, it was not, but I am now because when I saw the trailer, I was like, "What is this?" And I did a little bit of digging. So Kakao Games, if you're coming at it from the mobile game purview, they're the ones in charge of Guardian Tales, which is I don't really do gacha anymore, but my understanding is that Guardian Tales is like a Legend of Zelda style gacha in a way, but it has like a lot of humor and whatnot. Anyways, as far as this goes, it kind of reminds me of like looking at the gameplay footage. It kind of reminds me of a mix of, and I know people are gonna get mad at me, Souls and Arc-Age, which is an older MMO that kind of had like this open world medieval aesthetic that you could like capture land and sail from property to property, and PvP was a big deal. So details are kind of sparse on Chrono Odyssey, but I'm looking forward to it. Like I'm willing to give any MMO a try. I'm juggling 3 MMOs at the moment, and it feels not great to try and add a fourth, but the open beta for that is on the 20th, I believe. So yeah, I'll check it out.
Cool. maybe we'll have to wrangle you back on here to talk about your impressions.
Absolutely.
We also got a release date and some information about the recently announced Digimon Story Time Stranger. Of course, this has long been in development. There was teases that at every Digimon event they would kind of reassure us that it was coming, but we wouldn't hear anything else. Was finally announced earlier this year at Digimon Con. Or I guess it was shown earlier than that, and then had more information the month later at Digimon Con. Did show up again at Summer Games Fest, or sorry, at the State of Play, and did get a release date. This is going to be come out globally on October 3rd for, again, PC, PS5, and Xbox. And then we also got some details about the PC port, which normally talking specifically about PC technical stuff, it's more of a James area, or specifically we've been talking about the handhelds, Mikhail area compared to me. But one thing that was interesting about this is that both console versions, PS5, PS5 Pro, Xbox Series X and S, this game is slated to run at 30 FPS, which I know some people are kind of surprised. Seems low. I know that seems
Well,
like
yeah. I mean, it's a turn-based game. How can you have like 30 FPS on consoles on a
well,
turn-based game?
some people might argue that for a turn-based game that makes the frame rate less important. But I think we were looking at the art style, looking at like, obviously trying to like judge the complexity of the assets or the post-processing or whatever. But then to hear it's 30 FPS even on a PS5 Pro just is a little bit like, oh, I guess I wasn't expecting that. Or at least have a performance mode available of some sort. But no, it's just based on the available information available from the official website. 60 FPS on Steam, but for both consoles, 30 FPS is the target frame rate. As for the trailer itself, as someone who's kind of a lapsed Digimon fan, to me it just kind of looks like what I expect from a Digimon RPG. I haven't played like Cyber Sleuth or anything like that to know like how it officially differs in terms of its progression or how it looks. Though we did talk about how it has the movable camera, which the other games didn't quite have as often. But coming out in October, which is not yet a crowded month, but always becomes a crowded month very quickly. I know a lot of people on site were really impressed by Cyber Sleuth, specifically Hacker's Memory. Was that the re-release? So I'm interested to see what the Digimon stands on site really think about when Time Stranger releases. Go ahead, Mikhail.
Having free camera movement is good, but I don't know what the deal is with the 30 FPS, because when they showed Time Stranger for the first time, it looked like they'd finally given a Digimon game a budget, but it really didn't look like it was pushing tech or anything, at least from the outside. In fact, if you look at the screenshots on Steam right now, there's like some of the screenshots, the textures on the floor and the shadows look really, really bad and like low quality. So I wonder what's causing this, because I think the PS5 Pro thing is just the game does not have PS5 Pro support. So they're just putting that there for people who would expect that. That's just speculation on my part. But I think the fact that the Steam version is capped at 60 is also surprising. Like, you just expect games now to be uncapped frame rate. Like, why are you capping stuff to 60? You're not From Software, who releases like awful PC ports now. But I don't know. It just tells me that maybe this game is not well optimized or something, because you just don't see like capped at 60 FPS on PC for a new game anymore. Like maybe like an old port or like a remaster or something, because they had like frame rate or like movement speed tied to frame rate or some nonsense like that in an old game. But I don't know. It's just not a good sign. Like I don't know. Like it just tells me that if a game is running at 30 FPS on PS5, what's going to happen to Steam Deck? And is that why the game is not coming on Nintendo Switch too? Like these are all just questions that run through my head when I saw that.
When I watched the trailer, like it's visually pleasing. Like the art style, I think is good and fitting. So I'm not like besmirching how the game looks. Uh, and I do have like the Digimon nostalgia, so I wouldn't say I'm uninterested in this game. I just don't know how it's going to land in terms of being right in the middle of that holiday. Well, early October, I guess might play to its benefit rather than like late October or early November.
Same month as Pokemon.
Oh yeah, I guess that feels fitting though to have Digimon and Pokemon coming out
Yeah.
close to each other. I'm not sure.
And, and it's a rare time that I'm interested in both games, because I don't really care about Pokemon much, but I enjoyed Arceus a ton. like to the point where I still use the RCS branded case on my Switch OLED. So I'm excited for this Pokemon game, and I'm excited for this Digimon game as well. So we'll see.
This one I have it written in. This is for Kunitsu-Gami Path of the Goddess. It has an update called Otherworldly Venture mode. It is now available as a free update, and we have a trailer talking about the release of this update to Kunitsu-Gami up on the site as well.
Yeah, this is something which, like, there was some discussion whether it fits in our scope or not, but in the end we did cover it, and James reviewed the launch version, and now it's coming to Switch 2. Like, it's out on Switch 2 with like mouse controls, gyro support, and they added like this new mode which you unlock when you finish the game, and that's a free update for all the other platforms. This is actually the one Switch physical game key card I've ordered, like, because it's only available in Japan, and there's no Kunitsu-Gami merchandise easily available. So I was like, I want to support this release, so I ordered it. So I'll see how it is on Switch 2 when it shows up. Because it was a bit demanding on consoles and Steam Deck. I think you can't really play this at 60 FPS on Steam Deck, so I'm curious how the Switch port ends up when I start playing it. But I don't think I'm going to finish it on Switch 2 to play this otherworldly venture mode, so I may have to re-download it on PC to access my save there. But I am excited to like give Kunitsugami some time again because I enjoyed it when I played it before. I don't know if you gave it a shot.
I didn't.
Okay. It's definitely an interesting and unique blend of a few genres. So
And then the last one we have here, this is not a trailer, this is just an update from Spike Chunsoft about the upcoming No Sleep for Kaname Date AI, the Somnium Files. It's basically just a press release. It talks about what features this game has, what the returning characters are, when the game takes place. It takes place after the first game. It does incorporate some features that were introduced in the second game. And then some of the returning characters, Ota Matsushita, Mizuki Date, Tama. So I'm not familiar with the Somnium Files.
I'm excited for the most mentally unwell friends of mine to have more AI the Somnium Files to digest, because I don't know what it is about Konami, the character, but it has broken a ton of brains. The games are good too. I really liked playing both AI games. Or sorry, AI the Somnium Files. I need to clarify.
Yes. I also have I think we already talked about this, but we have articles up for the different Switch 2 first-party games that have gotten updates for the new console: Xenoblade Chronicles 3, Tears of the Kingdom, Link's Awakening, Echoes of Wisdom, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, etc.
I think
A
Echoes
few,
of Wisdom is noteworthy because they added that. They added the ability to like use a favorites menu for echoes when you hit 30 echoes. Otherwise, you have to scroll through that
yeah,
stupid like line of which they like when I played Tears of the Kingdom, I was like, who designed this awful UI? And then when I got Echoes of Wisdom, they did the same shit over there, and I was like, why? This is what happens when like people don't criticize problems in some games. You just have the devs doing the same bad things again. So I can't believe it took them to like when the Switch 2 version update or like when the Switch 2 backward compatible patch releases to add a new feature for that. But yeah, that is available on Switch 1 as well.
I was reading the patch notes and being like, that better be available on the Switch 1, and it is. So version 1.1 added a feature to display only favorited echoes, available both on Switch 1 and 2. And then for Switch 2, it says optimize visuals, support HDR, etc. A couple launch trailers that we put up on the site for Bravely Default, Flying Fairy HD Remaster, and the Nintendo Switch 2 edition of Fantasy Life, The Girl Who Stole Time. So we have those launch trailers up on the site. We also have the launch trailers for Cyberpunk 2077 Ultimate Edition on Switch 2. We've already kind of talked about how that is, in some estimations, kind of like a tentpole release for the platform, because when Witcher 3 released on Switch, it was more of a wow, it's possible, they made it happen, where it seems like impressions on Cyberpunk on Switch 2 are genuinely more like, damn, they made it happen, like this works really well on Switch 2. So the flavor of the response has been slightly different. And we also got a launch trailer and launch notes for the previously discussed Guardians of Azuma. Which is that coming to Switch 2 later, or is it on Switch 2 available now as
No.
well?
It what they did is they delayed the PC and Switch 1 versions by a
Oh,
week
that's what it
because
was.
they
Because
were
they were
initially,
supposed.
yeah. And
Yeah,
then
yeah, I remember now.
it's a simultaneous thing, and it's the only other third party game which has everything on cartridge for Switch 2, and it has save transfer and all that stuff. I'm That's another game which I'm gonna try when I get my Switch 2, because I already covered how the PC version was on both handhelds and the Switch 1 version. Probably gonna go back and update that with Switch 2 impressions to talk about that. But yeah, that was like one of the quote unquote important third party launch titles, because it was a new game. It's not a port or anything like that. So that is, yeah, Guardians of Azuma, Nintendo Switch, and they have a lot of DLC for the game as well. Like there's like a deluxe upgrade, there's a super deluxe upgrade, and then there's Rune Factory for costumes, and then there's the Sakuna of Rice and Ruin free DLC for all platforms.
We're kind of wrapping up some of the big highlights of the news week at this point. One of the last remaining ones is that we do have this is something I kind of glossed over, but it actually is quite a bit of footage during the State of Unreal showcase, which was a while ago at this point, relative to everything else, back on June 3rd. CD Projekt took the stage to show off an extended look at a tech demo of The Witcher 4, which was later clarified to not be like they're very careful with their language to say that this Witcher 4 is in Unreal Engine, and then this is an Unreal Engine tech demo, but that's all this is. They're very careful to say that this is not necessarily how the game will look like or representative of actual gameplay in The Witcher 4. But it does show a lot of like free camera movement of course, the new protagonist, Ciri, the NPC interactions, just environmental details, things like that. Again, really focusing on Unreal being the engine and the partner for CD Projekt for Witcher 4, not explicitly calling this a Witcher 4 trailer. So as someone who is a fan of Witcher, but not like a huge fan of Witcher, I kind of took that to be like, oh, this looks pretty neat. And then I kind of flushed it away, just like, I've seen Unreal Engine 5 games. Like, to me, it's a known quantity. It is really cool to see like how far it's come since Witcher 3, which is, I believe, built in their specific own engine, their Red engine. And I know when they made the announcement to go to Unreal Engine, there was some well, why not just use the one they already know? So I think this is trying to quell those fears a little bit in some extent. Though we already are aware of some of the limitations of Unreal Engine with like frame caching and things like that. I can't speak to it as technically as James can, so I know those concerns will persist until the game's in our hands. But we do have an extended, fun, like 12 to 14 minute look of pretty long Witcher 4 themed tech demo up on the site as well. Raito Remastered got a story and characters trailer. Of course, that they've had like a series of primers up ahead of that game's release, which is only in like a little over a week. So, of course, coming out for Switch 2, releasing on the 19th, but also Xbox, PC, PlayStation. And there's been a series of trailers on that. They're calling this the last Principles of Raito trailer. So Alice has done this time and time again. Just a little bit trailer ahead of the game's release. We did get a montage trailer for the upcoming Wu Chang Fallen Feathers, which is releasing in a little over a month in mid-July. So we got a new montage of that game as well. I know Adam's interested in that one, so I'm not sure if he'll go to Wu Chang or if he'll go to Lies of P in terms for his next Souls-like.
Non-Souls. What do you mean?
Yeah, well, non FromSoft. I mean, like Adam, I think he prides himself on he's never played Dark Souls, he's never played Elden Ring, he's never played Demon Souls, but he's played like The Surge. If Adam listens to this, I'm sorry, but he's played like all the other like mid Souls games and the good ones like Lies of P, but he hasn't played Dark Souls or any of them, which is fair, valid, that's good. But I think he refuses to at this point.
I
sorry.
forgot the Surge exists. Isn't there like a Surge 2 or something?
Yeah, there's a Surge 2.
That was one of the earliest ones that kind of took that framework and ran with it.
I'm sorry. I'm still struggling with. Has never played any Dark Souls, Demon Souls, Bloodborne, Elden Ring. Has played the Surge.
Yep. A few sales updates here. Fantasy Life I, The Girl Who Steals Time. We last updated last week that they had sold. How many was it last week? Was
500K.
500K.
Not as 500.
and now they're
Yeah.
over 800,000 in 10 days since launch. So very excited, very good game, very strong word of mouth. I'm expecting that we will be reporting on the 1 million announcement in not too long.
It'll be for
Nightreign.
the next podcast.
Oh yeah, probably. Elden Ring Nightreign, like the week it came out, it immediately went to 2 million. Now they're up to 3.5 million. Though of course they phrase this as saying 3.5 million Nightfarers. I don't know if their cost is this game on Game Pass or no? It's not.
No,
Is
no, no.
it?
So
So
what's happened is I've seen confusion around this as well because the English account just says we're happy to welcome whatever 3.5 million, like you mentioned. But the Japanese FromSoft account specifically says it's the number of copies shipped and sold. So that's what
gotcha.
I've
So it's the
been.
standard.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's just that the the celebratory
the little
artwork for the
thumbnail.
milestone
Yeah.
says, yeah. So it gets a little confusing that way. But the Japanese FromSoft account specifically said shipped and sold, so it is sales.
It's weird. Like back
It's not
back
on
in the
Game Pass.
day, yeah, back in the
Yeah,
day, it would be like the distinguishment was shipped and sold, which was more common, and then sold through, which was kind of like the legit one,
yeah,
like
yeah,
it's not just in a box in Walmart. But
yeah, yeah.
now you have like the people who have downloaded the game online. How many players have we gotten? And that's kind of how they're phrasing these updates. But thanks for the clarification that no, this is the
Yeah,
traditional ship to retailers, 3.5 million copies for
yeah.
Elden Ring Nightreign.
Yeah, if it was just 3.5 million players, I wouldn't even report it. Like I don't care about that stat. It's not useful.
Yeah. And Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak just hit a major milestone. I'm always not surprised to see how big of numbers these Monster Hunter expansions get. This is for specifically the expansion of Monster Hunter Rise. So Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak has hit 10 million threshold sales count. So obviously very impressive for what used to be Switch exclusive, but now is on every platform, like you said. We'll wrap up this podcast by going through some dates, as we normally do. First one I have here is actually it's an announcement of an announcement. Atelier Resleriana, The Red Alchemist, and The White Guardian. Remember, this is the second title with the tag Atelier Resleriana, not the original. This is the standalone full price version.
Not the gotcha one.
Right, the more traditional one. They'll be announcing the release date on June 13th. So next week we'll be able to tell you what the release date for Atelier Resleriana, The Red Alchemist, and The White Guardian would be. We have one of probably several games heading into early access. Nitrogen Omega is going to have its early access version launching on June 17th. We first covered this back in April. It had a pretty fun, flashy, kind of older anime aesthetic styled announce trailer back then. Going to go into early access within a couple weeks. Probably one of several as we go into like the Steam Next Fest demo session of the year. This is a console version that I forgot didn't exist yet. One of the big games last year, Black Myth Wukong, ended up winning like our best art of the year. Never had its Xbox version. I forgot about that. It will be launching on August 20th for Xbox Series X and S. So, which is, I guess, a year on from its original release on PlayStation and PC. So, made good on their word, coming to Xbox, coming on to Xbox 1 year after its launch. A few other indie game announcements. We have Toa, The Guardians of the Sacred Tree, will launch on all platforms, including Switch. I guess not Switch 2, just listed on Switch, on September 19th. And I guess that's actually the last release date that I had, but I do have one other final closing news piece here. The final news piece that I have here is an announcement of a departure of a longtime employee at Square Enix. Series director of The World Ends With You, Tatsuya Kondo, has left Square Enix. Obviously, his most recent notable release was Nioh: The World Ends With You back in 2021. Of course, he was also involved with Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts. Kingdom Hearts, of course, had a big World Ends With You crossover. And then also he was involved with the crossover with Remnants. Remember, Remnants had a World Ends With You crossover. So he was with Square Enix for 29 years. I don't think we have any details about whether he's retiring or heading to another studio, but we wish Tatsuya Kondo the best in whatever his endeavors lead him to next.
That's a pretty long time. It's like 29 years, was it? It's like,
yeah. I haven't been at a single company for more than like 6 years in my like IRL job. I've been at RPG site for 9, so like a third of the time less. It feels like
But
forever. Mhm.
Yeah, well, time goes by. It's like, I always feel like I was working here yesterday or something. And then you look
Well-
at the date, it's like, oh wait, I'm here for like 8 or something years or something. Like, oh jeez.
But so he resigned on the 31st. Best of luck to you, Kondo-san, about wherever you're heading next. And that's not absolutely everything that came out of the announcements of the week. Of course, there's lots of bit news and rapidly evolving kind of details as a game is announced at one event and detailed at another, or has an initial trailer and then has an interview exclusive at another website that provides more details, things like that. So obviously next week we might be touching on some of these same news bits with additional details and context. For instance, I wouldn't be surprised if by the time this is published or soon thereafter, we get more details about the Final Fantasy Tactics Remaster, exactly what it is and isn't. And then, of course, all the things that we're expecting to see at the other events. We talked about the all but confirmed Persona 4 remake. The voice actors went, and expressed their opinions on social media. People are expecting to see that at the Xbox show because Xbox has had a big partnership with Atlas specifically for the Persona series in the past. So wouldn't be surprised if by the time this goes up, that's been announced at the Xbox show. And then, of course, everything else that comes out of the week of announcements. So as a reminder, all of those reviews and previews are up on the site. That includes the Fantasy Life review, the Rune Factory Guardians of Azuma review. We've got the listicle of the games we want to revisit on Switch 2. We've got Chow's Bravely Default Flying Fairy walkthrough up on the site, and Days Zenless Zone Zero 2.0 preview up on the site, as well as all the news and trailers that were announced over the week, the whole gamut. You can find RPG site on all the social media networks. Just search for RPG Space Site, and you should be able to find us. Join our Discord, discord.gg/RPG site. Whatever you listen to this podcast through, whether it's Spotify or whatever podcast service of choice, if you've made it to the end, again, we appreciate you so much. Leave us a like, leave us a rating, leave us a comment on the site. We love to see those. I do want to give a big shout out to some of the non-regular participants we had on the podcast. We had Nathan and Cullen that had to step out early, but Junior, thanks for sticking it all the way through. Yeah, and obviously you're in Japan, so in terms of I don't want to ask you.
To peek behind the curtain a little bit, it is currently Sunday morning at right now it is, as of this recording, 5:30 in the morning. So we started recording at 3 in the morning my time.
And Mikhail, what time is it for you?
It is exactly 2 a.m. now.
Yeah, I'm going back to sleep.
All right, so we're going to sign off. You two go to bed. I'm going to go grab some lunch. As always, thank you so much for listening. Stay safe, take care, and we'll talk to you next time.